Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Remnant. We have another guest, and it's long overdue. This is a podcast that I always listen to. If you have not listened to this podcast, you might as well just pause us, go download it, listen to it, and then come back to us. I'll wait.
You say that every week.
Well, I really like this podcast.
You say that
um,
every
we have Chris from Following Films. And I have told Chris, I think we have the same taste in movies. And I think that's why I like this podcast so much. Chris, go ahead and tell our listeners, a little bit about your show and where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, so I really do appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about this movie today. But my podcast, I've had it for about 7 years now. I used to guest on other people's podcasts, doing movie reviews here and there. Most notably, I became a co-host of a show called War Machine versus Warhorse. After a while, my taste, I think, you touched on that, tends to veer more towards independent, smaller movies. There's a video store clerk inside me that's always looking to give recommendations to people. So I've always been looking for things that are a little bit off the beaten path. And in that, when we were looking at these movies to review, I just had this thought, maybe I could reach out to some of these people and see if they'd be willing to talk to us. And just connections started building on top of each other. And I really just wanted to start doing an interview show because that's really, in the end, what I was most excited to do. And I've been at it for a lot longer than I ever thought I would be. So it's been a lot of fun. And thank you for listening. I do appreciate it.
Awesome.
Give the listeners, you gave high praise. So listen to this for a few minutes first. And if you don't like anything you're hearing, don't check it out because it doesn't get me better on my show.
So, and they can kind of see the group of some people. We're some people.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go on into the first segment.
Define science fiction remnant.
And in this segment, you probably know by now that we ask for definitions of our show. So if you like sci-fi and you listen to our show and you know someone that likes sci-fi and have not listened to our show, how do you describe us to them? And you could actually reach out to us on Twitter if you want a little shout out on this section. So I have two. So we always have to mention Rosalita in every episode. What do you guys think? She is amazing. And, she came back in Twitter and says, an intelligent conversation about sci-fi topics. The guys are all fun and entertainment. I think we just goof around. What do you guys think?
you goof around. I do research.
I had to think. I mean, I read that and it made my day when I read it. Because I like to think that if we can bring a little nugget of science in a conversation with the topics of the movies that we talk about, then I'm really happy. So thank you for calling us an intelligent conversation. I really appreciate that. And of course, we have a lot of fun because this is a topic that we all love, science fiction. Okay, so the next one is coming from another podcast that I like. It's called Spaceships. We had them on our show before, and slightly different. It's a drama, kind of like a comedy drama about spaceships, which I also listen to, and they call us. I don't know how to feel about this, Ray. I'm gonna get your opinion on this, but he's
Okay.
calling us the sages of sci-fi. I don't know how to feel.
I feel like that was written prior to my being a guest on this show. So
I kind of feel like I'm an old man now. Like I should go live in a cave somewhere and have people come to me.
Already glorified. It's like you know that the word glorified was something that's above glorified.
As long as the cave has good internet, I'm okay.
Man, when they call me that, I feel like just putting a white tunic and some I don't know, oregano leaves on my head.
But you know,
Dominican Olympus.
Dom- I I do feel thankful for both of those comments, and it actually really made my day when I read them. So thank you so much, um, for the comments, and keep on coming, keep on coming. Should we move on to the next one? Let's see. We are Science Fiction Reddit.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is SciFi.
And on this section, we talk about our hashtag. This is sci-fi. And if you don't already know by now, this is the area where if you are a sci-fi lover or a sci-fi creator of any kind, basically just you either follow or just post under the this is sci-fi hashtag, and we can continue the conversation. We all are fans of the sci-fi genre, and not only do we have the hunger for more, but also there's that discovery portion that we all love when it comes to our favorite topic. Um, I don't know exactly how you guys feel, but I am loving this week. Um, in the this is sci-fi hashtag. Um, there's a lot of postings that I noticed about our as the time of the recording, our last episode, which is Alien. So I'm seeing a lot of conversation about that movie based on that episode that we released. Um, I also see conversation about we do have a T-shirt giveaway by now. Um, the winner must have been announced, but basically what it is we have a T-shirt giveaway where you can actually give us a positive review, and you get um, into a giveaway where we're gonna pick one person and give the Science Fiction Remnant T-shirt. Um, and also, I I seen articles posted in this hashtag as well, either from me or from other people, and I really like that because I like to read a lot about sci-fi. Like one article that I can point out, for example, so something that I found interesting, and it was as is Riker's USS Titan appearing in Star Trek Picard season 3. It was an article from TrekCentral.net. So yeah, I invite everybody to go in, and if you find something interesting that it has to do with sci-fi, go ahead and post it in there. I'm actually reading everything. Well, it's a little overwhelming, but because there's a lot of conversation, but I'm definitely in every day. Um, you guys have any experience for this week that you want to point out? If not, we can move on. Just curious because I'm just doing all the talking.
I'm just trying
We
to
like the
think,
tone of your voice,
did
man.
anything pop up through there that sort of caught my notice?
Thank God I have water here.
That's okay.
There's been a lot of love for Strange New Worlds recently, and did I see that the Orville season 3 had just finished? Was that
Yes.
correct? Or
I haven't continued.
And it hasn't been renewed for season 4 yet. So I think the Orville fans are a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I heard also that they're moving to Disney Plus.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of which, I was quite pleased because I don't actually have was it on HBO or Tubi, or I can't remember where it was showing. Where was
it was on
showing?
Fox, I believe.
All right, yeah. Well, I didn't have access to that, and I was like, how am I going to watch Orville? And then when I went to look for Safety Not Guaranteed, I found it was on a streaming service connected to a channel down here called SBS, which is sort of our international world movies, sort of world TV shows channel, and it was available there for free. So I watched it last night, and I noticed when I was there, because I don't go to that streaming service very often, and they've got the entirety of Orville season 3, and I'm like, so I'll be catching up with that very shortly. So maybe we should do the Orville sometime soon.
Yeah, we should. It's a really good show. It's one of the few shows that my wife enjoys. So maybe I can, just like we did Warehouse 13, maybe I can have her come on our show again. But yeah, this show is really cool, and it started as a comedy and it became very serious towards season 3.
Well, wasn't it originally pitched as Star Trek with drugs and hookers?
That's lower decks. That's lower decks, right?
No, it was Orville.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go and move on to the next segment.
Shout out.
And for this segment, we have shout outs to Ro. Hey, is Ro Gaza on Twitter, and he's actually listening to our show. So I really wanted to thank him for the great comments and the shout outs on Twitter when he listens to our episode. So thank you so much. Is there anybody else you guys want to shout out?
I'll be quiet for this one, but I do have like all the shout outs that I wanted to do that I don't have on top of my head right now. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it, man. I failed.
You say we don't have a shout out for Angelus this week. That would be like the first time this season that we haven't had one.
That's it. Come on, Joe.
Yeah, man. In this assignment, I was a kid that just put the signature and it worked.
So yeah, if you guys like to have a shout out, basically, just interact with our accounts, and let's keep the conversation going, and you can be featured in future episodes.
I actually have. Well, it's not a shout out per se, but don't forget the hashtag Dennis the next Mandalorian.
Yes.
So hashtag Dennis the next Mandalorian.
We want to
You have
see
to put
him
that.
in an episode of a future Mandalorian, or I mean, hey, I take anything. It could be Ahsoka. It could be any of those.
He can be a
season
clone.
2 of
He can be a
Kenobi.
clone.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want
they've
to
got to
see this.
introduce new
No.
characters
I want to showcase him.
at some point. I mean, as Din Djarin moves back towards his home planet to, because he's got the sword now, there's got to be other new characters that are going to come into it who are Mandalorians. So, they'll be looking for new Mandalorians.
Yeah. So yeah,
I reckon they could slide him in there, slid him into it.
So what was the
strong
hashtag? Gio, what
Dennis,
was the hashtag?
Dennis Malin, the next Mandalorian.
There you go. Awesome.
Don't worry, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it and put it on the account.
Nice.
And I'm gonna make some funny collage drawing with his face like big headed.
There you go. Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
The Outer Remnant.
And we haven't been in any, me and Giancarlos, I don't think, Giancarlos, you have been in anything for this week. I'm not sure if, Chris, would you like to shout out another podcast that you've been in that, I don't know if you have any in particular that you want to just shout them out so they can hear more of you, aside from following films?
If between this show and listening to my show, you still want more of me for whatever reason that you would actually want to do that, I don't know why. There's another show. Yeah, exactly. There's another show that's called Projecting Film that we haven't done it in a couple months now, but it looks like we'll be picking it back up again. where me and the co-host, we assign each other movies that we're in the mood to watch week
Nice.
to week. So we just take turns going back and forth and whatever our whims are, where I force him to watch movies about weird little shits that are indie films and he hates them, and he makes me watch sports movies and rom-coms.
I would have died on a dynamic like that with Robert. I would have died a long time ago.
And I tried. He just wasn't having it.
Yeah.
That was in season 1, right?
Yeah. We had a couple of movies that we were watching. Like I have read the book, and then I watched the movie, and like it was a classic, and I was like, "No, we're not doing it. I'm gonna talk shit about it, and I want to do an episode talking shit about something."
Yeah, I tried, but I do like that dynamic. It's really cool.
It's torturous, man. What if I make you watch movies that you hate?
That's okay. I especially like it if it's something that I haven't seen before. If I end up hating it, that's fine. That's all right. Then you can. An opinion isn't right or wrong. It's just an opinion.
Have you guys watched Robert?
Exactly.
Have you guys watched Robert? Yeah, you guys have watched Robert, right?
I'm trying.
It's a movie. It's a movie about a tire. Robert.
Yeah, Rubber. I've seen it. Yeah. It's a
it's a silent movie about a tire. Quentin Tarantino. That movie. Oh my god.
Dupree, the guy that directed that, he's a French filmmaker. It's an amazing movie.
Yes, it is.
It's a movie. If you haven't seen it, if anybody listening to this, you haven't seen the movie Rubber, it's about a tire that has telekinetic powers, and like the movie Scanners, it can blow people up. And it's but the weird thing is the movie has more heart than you would expect. They actually go for like more emotion than you would think they would. It's a fun little movie. It's crazy. It's a good time.
Robert and Ray are like, what the fuck are we talking about here?
I know. Look, one of my favorite light novel series, which if people don't understand where light novels come from, they're Japanese sort of trendy, easy to read novels that are. There's a lot of them made, but they have lots of weird premises, and that's what I love about it. And the one that I was reading earlier this year that really stuck with me was called Reincarnated as a Sword. So yes, I know it's
interesting.
It's a genre called isekai, which is basically the main character is like a salaryman or such and such from Japan and ends up being reborn in another world as something else. There's a whole bunch of them, but they're really fun, and oftentimes the character is quite OP and they're trying to work out this new world, but they've got skills or abilities or powers which are ridiculously overcharged, and they're just trying to like work out how to exist in this new place. And there's so many good ones, but this one's coming up in October. Actually, it's being released as an anime, but the light novels are fantastic. And it's just this sort of you've seen all the different variations of people being people, and you go, what can we do next? Make people into inanimate objects.
Now, are all of the inanimate objects in this world, in this existence, is like a typewriter also sentient? Is every so it's just this one object, the sword or whatever that is?
Well, yeah. I mean, the sort of backstory is that there's these mystical swords created by god level blacksmiths, and they're created as sentient swords, and there's only about 10 or 12 of them in the world. And
that's a SEO.
Any country that owns one of these things ends up really powerful. So they're trying to. It's like nuclear weapons, but in a fantasy world.
Little Lord of the Rings-ish kind of thing.
Not really. I mean, Lord of the Rings-ish was sort of
like the swords that they present that are legendary, like the Goblin Cleaver and the Beater. Like those swords, like they have a background because of what they did on war, but not because they have powers. But the swords that Ray is talking about, like these swords have powers. Like they throw beams and shit out of it.
Oh, God,
right?
Powers, yeah.
Okay.
This guy ends up reincarnated into this sword, and the sword actually was too powerful for the world.
On toys.
The gods basically got together and went, nope, not that one, and they nixed it. But then the the Godsmith who created it got pissed off. It's like, you don't like my sword? Well, fine, I'll rework it. And he ended up in this sword. I'm not entirely sure if he got summoned into it, but his soul went, because he died in Japan and ended up in this other world in this sword. And he just woke up and he's like sword in the stone kind of in a plinth. And he's like, well, what the hell do I do now? I'm just sort of sitting here and you're like reading the premise and you're going, how is this going to work? But then he's got like telekinesis. So he can telekinese himself. So he's flying around, killing all these monsters and stuff, and leveling up. It's really amusing. And then he ends up flying into this forest, and what he would do is telekinese himself up into the air, and then sort of drop on a parabolic arc, and then go into the ground, and then do it again, sort of hop around the place. Because he's only got a certain amount of magical power that he can use for telekinesis. And he went into this forest, and it was a mana draining forest. So he got stuck in the ground there. He's like, crap, I can't move. And he's stuck there for several months. And then a slave train came through. It was being chased by a monster. And the creature was killing off the slaves and the slave owners. And there was this little 12-year-old... she's a beastkin called a black cat, and they're like the weakest beastkin in the entire world. Like everybody just captured them and used them as slaves because everybody thought they were useless. And she pulls him out of the ground, and he has the ability to take skills and stuff from the monsters that he kills, and he passes them on to her, and she suddenly becomes OP. She got this little 12-year-old slave running around chopping monsters to pieces. And then they end up, joining forces and going on these huge quests and stuff. It's really cool.
You can tell that we are really into anime. I
know nothing about anime. Nothing.
You've got to check it out. I mean, I just dropped a quick post in the science fiction group chat there talking about an anime called Rascal Does Not Dream About Bunny Girl Senpai.
Yeah, they have some titles.
You know what?
That's a title, man.
They have titles.
Let me explain something to Chris. You cannot let the titles discourage you.
No.
I cannot tell you how many times I listen to a title, I watch it, I look at the cover of it, and like nah, not watching this. And then I see a trailer and I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm stuck.
You've got to use the 3-episode rule. You've got to watch the first 3 episodes before you decide.
That's tough for me. I could have watched like a movie and a half in that amount of time. Dedicating 3 episodes to something that I don't even like. I feel like that's one of the, when people say there's a series you need to check out, but season 1's not great. Season 2's okay. But by the time season 3 comes around, once you're 27 hours into it, you might like it. I can't do that.
You're talking about The Office? Are you talking about The Office?
I mean, you could talk about Lost or The Office. It's like so many things that fall into that.
Oh my God.
The good thing about anime is that it's only 23 minutes per episode.
Yeah.
Roughly.
If you find something you like, you're going to hate it, because like I couldn't tell you how many shows I watched that I finished maybe in 2 days. And then I'm like, oh my God, now I got to wait for next year for the next season. So yeah,
I'm too impatient. I end up going back and reading the manga or going back to the light novels, and then you've got to wait for them to translate some more. And I'm like,
do you ever take time with these things though and let it kind of ruminate for a little while? I find that if the whole binging thing, I think that it's downgraded the experience of watching something, because if you go week to week and you put a little bit of time and you sit in it, by the time season 2 comes around, you have no memory of what happened because you watched it a year ago in one day. So do you remember that time that you went to a mall 18 months ago? What did you do that day? You're like, I have no idea. It's such a long time ago that I think, but if you actually sit with something and you talk about it and hang out with it for a little while and you spend 3 months thinking about the show, I think it lasts longer. And I miss week to week.
That is a very good question. And I can give you my point of my perspective. And I don't know if you guys go through the same thing. There has been some animes that, and Ray could attest to this, where they come in weekly. So you have, like there's one we're watching right now for the pharmacist kid, and I think there's only 3 episodes. There's gonna be another episode next week.
I love the titles.
That's
The-
called Parallel World Pharmacy, and it's
Yeah.
one of the best titles this season.
It's really cool.
See, animes run week to week with their current season, but once they've streamed the entire season,
Yeah, it's
then
all there.
It's all there, yeah. And then you can sort of, with the ones that get a dub, then you can watch the dub later on again in English and get a slightly different take from it.
Yeah.
I can't stand dub. And
Really?
sometimes in anime, you get a good performer from what I've seen, and they get good actors that come. But most of the time, unless it's a higher budget, they'll get like 2 actors doing all the voices, and they're not the original performance. And even if I don't speak the original language, to hear what the actor was saying and hear the intonation and hear their voice the way that it was originally designed and the actual creators chose that performance, to me that means so much more than just the convenience of not having to read the movie or the show.
And you see, if I like a show, I will watch it in sub, and then I'll watch it in dub and enjoy both of them.
Yeah, because that's the thing is that they have, when it's the
good.
show start,
Senpai.
they might have 1 episode in English and then 5 episodes in
Konnichiwa.
Japanese. And then you're like, so going back to what I was going to say, I might start with the English one. I watched the first episode. It's only, in average, it's 20 minutes, and that's counting the intro and the outro. So technically, it's actually a lot shorter. So then I watched this episode. I'm like, there has been some that I don't watch ever because I just, from the first episode, there's something I don't like. But there have been some episodes where I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So then I'm like, I can't wait. I'm going to go listen to I watched the one in Japanese, and I finished all 5, and let's say about 15 minutes a piece. And then I'm stuck because now they always leave you on a cliffhanger, and I gotta wait for next week. So usually what happens is I let it pile up. So I might leave it for 6 months and then go back to it.
That's my
and then I
guy.
can watch the entire thing. But that doesn't help because I watched the entire season 1. I get to the end, there's a cliffhanger, and I gotta wait for next year. So it's just like so
and oftentimes
usually,
it doesn't get a continuation.
Robert and I do the same thing. We just recap like watching the last 1 or 2 episodes. When we were watching The Expanse, we did the same thing. But basically, that's what we do because we're watching the last couple of episodes. It kind of reconnects the whole season, so we don't have to rewatch the whole thing. But that, I mean, I do the same thing. Like I just binge watch and then get depressed because I had to wait, and it was so good.
So Chris,
It's like finding a new addiction.
Here's a question for you. What do you think an anime called Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai would be about?
What was the last bit?
Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai.
About a full little boy being a super pervert.
I knew that's where you would go, Jim.
Did I hit the nail on the head?
A little boy that doesn't want to go to secondary school. I have no idea.
Well, it's high school, but yeah.
There goes.
No, it's actually about it's a syndrome. I'll call it made up because I've never heard of it before, but it's called adolescent syndrome, and basically they connect like supernatural happenings to particle physics in this anime. And it's that's the sci-fi angle that there's a character there called Reno, and she's like in science club, and she talks about Schrodinger's cat and the theory of things not existing until you've actually perceived them, and all sorts of stuff, and tying particle physics and into things happening to adolescents and stuff like weird happenings. It's a great little anime. I highly recommend it. I want to do it on the show one day.
What do you think about that idea? Because that's probably, of all the ideas that I've heard and theories, that's a really arrogant notion that something doesn't exist until it's been perceived.
That's called reality.
That's perception. That's not reality. Reality exists with or without your perception of it.
Yeah, that's true. But basically, it's like if I am gone, nothing that I know exists to my reality.
Well,
to me,
your perception is not a reality, though. That's not something that ever existed. That was your interpretation of it. That's your feeling. That's an emotional. That's not the.
No,
That's
you're
not
right.
DNA.
You're right.
That's not.
Is
That's not
is
the.
the whole paradox? If the tree falls from the forest and nobody is to hear it, did it make a sound? Yeah, it make a wave of sound still
Yeah,
when
of
it
course.
when it hit. So yes, you're totally right.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
But yeah,
well, there are situations in particle physics where
where they disappear
do,
and they change. The perception actually moves it, though.
Yeah, there's actually
that's an unfair game.
like a cloud of electrons is.
Yes.
You can't pinpoint where something is. There's only the possibility of where it is, and in actually trying to work out where it is, you actually change where it is. So it's a big problem in a lot of science where you going into something and looking at it will actually change what's happening there. You will affect what you're trying to view, and in doing so, modify the result. And it's often said that a result in science is not a result in science until you can create a machine that can record it, because you can't trust your eyes, ears, and so forth.
Yes.
I mean, it's a lot of hassle, especially at the subatomic particle level, to actually work out what the hell's going on.
It's utterly fascinating, but it's, if you think about it, even on just the experiential level for humans, if you talk to somebody and you have a conversation, that's one level of it. But if you put a microphone in front of people, if you put a camera there, that changes the nature of that. And you're absolutely right that when you start to record and observe, that does change reality. That doesn't mean that the reality didn't exist prior to that, though. You do our witnessing and recording is affecting reality, though, for sure. Yes.
Something that I
well,
like
we
about
touch
that
multiple
scenario
realities.
is the fact, like, for example, if you have the perception of a particular conversation that you recorded, there's a huge chance that the next time you listen to that conversation, that recording of that conversation, your perception will be different.
Always.
Well, every single perception of every single human is different. None of them are the same. Language is imperfect. Vision is imperfect. We all interpret what information.
The beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Eyes and ears. Exactly. That's why there's somebody out there for everybody, because everybody perceives things differently, and your mental state, whether you're have influences on you like autism or something like that, where your brain pathways are different from the bulk of humanity, whether you're affected by drugs, lack of sleep, emotional distress, all of these things change your perception, and these things don't stay stable. You're always changing.
Are you talking about me, Ray?
I'm always talking about you, Giancarlo, you know that. But all of these things change for everybody all the time. Nobody stays the same. So your perception of exactly the same thing will be different depending on when you perceive it. So
hey, being up several days, man, you sometimes don't know if it's Sunday or Saturday.
if you've ever been drunk,
already.
if you've ever been drunk and picked up and then woken up the next morning with that person sober, you will understand what I'm talking about.
No, when I got
my
drunk,
perception is
she's
different
very
now.
young, but like vomit and keep on drinking.
Well, there's been times that I've done interviews where I've recorded it and I felt like it just went horribly. Like nothing happened, didn't connect. It's just that thing that you're looking for. It just didn't work. Then you go back and listen to it and you're like, oh, that actually wasn't that bad. But you're still hearing those things that you're not 100% comfortable with, and you edit it and change it and put it out into the world. Then for whatever reason, you have to go back to it and listen to it 6 months later. And you're like, oh, well, okay, what the hell was I even thinking? Like, this is not that bad at all. It's just, that's because you're divorcing yourself from the experience of actually recording it or going through that. And you can't do that. It's not really possible.
You're looking at it from outside.
Yeah, exactly. When the further you can distance yourself from what you felt going through it, the better, the more objective you can be. So
yes.
Pretty.
Nice.
Well, a lack of objectivity when you're trying to get something out of a situation because you've got preconceived notions changes the way you perceive it. So that's your mental state. You're actually, your preconceptions and your desires for that situation change your perception of it, and then you become objective later on when you get away from that. And yeah, it's different for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, being unbiased is not easy, and an easy thing, and being self-aware.
I don't know that it's possible to be unbiased. Part of what has allowed humanity to grow and thrive is having shortcuts in the way that we perceive the world. And biases are something that helped us find danger. You know, you go through something, you experience something, and you see things. You know, I look at my hand, you'll see there's scarring on it. When I made popcorn, I caught myself on fire when I was like, this is about 10, 12 years ago. Yeah, exactly. Almost killed myself making popcorn. Ridiculous.
But
that's murderous popcorn. Like, this popcorn is good. It's murderous.
That's how into movies I am. I almost died for the movie snack. But now whenever I watch a movie, I cannot separate myself from the experience of being in an ICU for 6 weeks and spending 3 months in the hospital and being in a burn ward. So when I see people with burns, I watch Nightmare on Elm Street much differently than I used to prior to 11 years ago. So those kinds of things are far different. So yeah, and I think it's not sometimes our personal bias. We have to recognize that that's not something that applies to 99% of the world. And that's just your own shit. Like when I see something and I see somebody doing a stunt in a movie and they're on fire, like I get uncomfortable, but I know that's just me. So, and we all
that's a trauma bringing it back the experience to you.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
personal reality.
And I mean, Robert and I have spoken a lot about this in past episodes that we had when we felt insecure, and then we listened to it. And he's like, no, it was good, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
sorry, this derailed the place. I'm sure.
No, that was good.
we derail in every episode, okay?
Yeah, true. Not usually this early on.
Like the song says, train on the water, boat on the...
So I think this conversation plays well into our main topic for this episode.
Yes,
I think it's not too far apart from the topic that we're going to discuss.
And I tell you, Chris, when I was starting the movie, like Robert knows, like I'm not too good with slow movies and romantic and stuff. So I'm watching the movie, I'm like, and then I'm half of the movie, I'm like, this movie's fucking good.
I was so curious to see what Giancarlo's was going to think.
No, Cole every time. Kenneth would take me like aback, like, holy shit, this guy is actually amazing.
had any of you guys seen this movie or heard of it before going into this?
No. And I know just two actors from there. The that was in Parks and Recs, which I don't remember her name, which is
Aubrey Plaza.
Aubrey Plaza,
yeah.
And the guy, the guy that is that works with her, that has a younger
Mark
brother.
Duplass?
Jake Johnson.
Yeah.
He's from New Girl.
Yeah, for New Girl, I know him. That's the only thing I knew. And like I watched him, like I like Parks and Rec, and I like New Girl, but like I like that. Like I watch it, and like everybody like did a great role, even the other characters actually. But my favorite was like so many little things about life that we can relate to. Like he has a normal job, a simple job, and when he tried to actually express and share what he has with others, he's just thinking like a crazy person. Like I don't know if you guys have gone through that. I go through that many times. I just don't talk to people about stuff anymore.
But every one of the characters in this film are outsiders. These are all people, we see the person who believes that he can travel through time as the crazy person. But as we get to know all these characters, none of them are expressing themselves for who they are. They're all scared of being themselves. And so it's something that I find really interesting that they all tie together like that. But I wasn't sure if we were completely into this yet or not. Sorry. I don't want to dive in.
Yeah.
Well, before we move into the movie, because yeah, everyone here is dying to talk about this movie. Um, let's finish the segment. Uh, Ray, I think you have a particular outer remnant that you want to jump in before we move on to the main topic of this episode.
Oh, it's just my usual shtick. You know how it is. It's where else I hang out. Yeah. So this week I was hosting like 24 hours ago. Well, I say this week, but when this recording is released, it'll be several weeks previously. But we had our usual first Saturday of the month manga episode on Radio Chaos, which is the Alita Army live stream every Saturday. It's at the moment it's 5 p.m. Eastern Summertime or Daylight Saving Time, which is what you guys are under. Of course, it being a worldwide fandom, well, 2 out of 4. I don't even know where you're located, Chris.
I live in Arizona. We don't do daylight savings time, so yeah, it's the one place and doesn't do it.
There's got to be one, doesn't there? Just the people who remember what the real world's like. But yeah, yeah, that'd be 5 p.m. for you too then. Yeah, we were talking about a manga chapter in the Motorball arc, where obviously I don't know, Chris, have you experienced the wonder of the Alita Battle Angel movie yet?
Oh yeah, I've seen the movie. Yeah, I'm
cool.
Big fan.
Have you done it on your show?
I'm sorry.
Have you done it on your show?
No, my show is interview based. So I speak with filmmakers. If I have the chance to speak with James Cameron or Robert Rodriguez, I will definitely jump into that. But
yeah, we've been swinging and missing on that particular pitch for a long time. So yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, well, we're working off the manga, which is the source material for the movie, and we're into an arc now, which is after the first movie. So we're looking at scenes that we're hoping will make it into the sequel when it's made. Please make one.
Is there going to be a sequel?
Well, they want to make one. The actors and the filmmakers want to make one, but now the IP rests in Disney's hands, and it's not in the favorable position with Disney yet. But the way we look at it, James Cameron has maxed out his credit card of $1 billion with Avatar movies. Once he's paid that back with interest, then I suspect that there will be funds loosened up for other projects, and it'll see the light of day then. But yeah, you know, that $1 billion has got to come back. It's been thanks to COVID, it's been sitting out there for a while now. So yeah, everybody has to go and see Avatar 2 at Christmas, please.
Yeah, I just had to point out that if you want a sequel for Alita, you are part of the Alita army.
It's a low bar to get into the Alita army. It's just you want to have you like the movie and want a sequel, you're in.
There's no standards. There's no standards.
That's it. That's pretty much it. And so please make a sequel. We're dying for one. So awesome. Okay, so now we can move on to the topic of this episode, and I would have to say, that this movie. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it costs $750,000 to make.
Yeah, that's about it. So the guy who plays Mark Duplass, the guy who plays the gentleman that's traveling through time, him and his brother Jay, when they were in college together, they were going to University of Texas, and they started making movies for fun. And they just kept bankrolling the next film. And they made this movie under that model where they would make a movie, go take it to Sundance, sell that, then use the profits to make the next movie, and just kept reinvesting in themselves. They got to a point where they started making big budget studio films, but they really have always enjoyed doing this kind of stuff and still continue to do it to this day. So that's why this was, I think, probably the 10th film they produced or something like that, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. So yeah, this was for them an expensive movie at the time. This was kind of their big budget. This is their Avatar. This is their Titanic. So because they spent almost $1 million on it.
And the reason why I want to point that out is because I find that it doesn't matter how much it costs to produce or to make a movie. If you have a good story and I guess partly good chemistry within the actors and everybody working on the film, it doesn't really matter how much the movie cost.
You could say that. I mean, the when we did, what was it?
He doesn't if you get the money.
Upgrade had a very low budget. That was
Mhm.
like less than $1 million as well. And I was just looking here on Professor Google, and Professor Google was telling me the box office for this movie was 4.4 million, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at it, cost less than $1 million and it made nearly 4.5 times that.
So if you use the Spider-Man numbers, $250 million to make one of those things, and it crosses $1 billion, that's when they feel like it was a good return on investment. And this was the same return on investment, but you could make for the you could make 250 movies for that cost of one of those. What are the chances that if you made 250 movies that you'd find something truly original, unique, interesting, instead of just regurgitating the same story that we've been watching for the last 40 years over and over and over again? To me personally, I would rather see those 250 original stories than one tentpole IP thing.
Well, there's a lot of people that have got used to science fiction having lots of CGI and special effects and things like that, but this movie has a little bit right at the end. It doesn't have much, but I think they used it well.
But
they put it in the right spot.
I just want to point out, there's just another movie that I'm dying to do in a future episode, but I just have to point it out. The movie Primer.
Yeah, I love it. Great movie.
It only cost $7,000 and he made $841,000.
Yeah. Robert Rodriguez's first movie. Your Alita director, Robert Rodriguez, his first movie, El Mariachi, I think it was $7,000 to $10,000 also, something like that. So that's, you can make something interesting and unique. And to me, you're right. There's a little bit of special effects at the end, but the special effect in Safety Not Guaranteed that really works, that gets me when I watch this movie, that it's the way that Aubrey Plaza looks at him with reverence. This character that everybody else thinks is crazy, and they just think he's this terrible person, not worth paying attention to. He's off his rocker, but you can see she has genuine affection for him, and
But here's the funny thing: she starts not feeling like that. She starts trying to mock him and starts falling for him.
But
that's the funny thing. You see the conversion throughout the relationship. You're like, wow, this is like subtle but like nice.
Well, once they get to the training montage in it, you can see that she's starting to come around, and it's like this thing, like the cold exterior, the mission at hand, that's being chipped away. And if you watched Parks and Rec, I think it's the same thing that she does with Chris Pratt's character in that.
Yeah.
He's essentially just this big, he's like a dog. He's like a large, lovable, goofy, dumb dog that that he's great. He's such a wonderful, lovable character. But if you knew that guy in real life, you would not want to spend any amount of time with this guy, but you believe that she really does like him. And I think that's something that she does really well, is that she can make you believe that she has feelings for these people that nobody else likes. And she's just great in this role.
Well, you look at this, but sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, one thing that I like about this film is the fact that we see character growth in almost every one of the main characters.
For sure. Yeah.
It's usually, I don't think I can recall, where, there's character growth in certain characters. But like, this is the whole cast, which I find it very refreshing. I was just telling Giancarlos, this movie feels like chicken soup for the sci-fi heart. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys.
It does.
It's just like I loved it. I really do.
Well, the people that are attracted to science fiction are generally outsiders. They're people that people that are reading Omni magazine when they're in high school instead of Sports Illustrated. There are people that, want to talk about Wrath of Khan instead of the game that weekend. There are people that are just a little bit off the beaten path. Those are my people. It might not be sci-fi, but if you are into something that other people don't necessarily get, you're a podcaster. Like, you want to do something like this, then you're part of my tribe. I get you in that way. And so I think that's what this is speaking to.
The beautiful thing is that it's not uncool now to like things that aren't the everyday, which
now it's a
our
trend.
time, basically.
But there's still a difference,
Trendy.
though.
Well, nerd and geek are no longer insults.
Well, I would say geek, just knowing what a geek actually is, that's one that I would rather not be called. That was the lowest circus performer. That's the guy that would bite the head off of a chicken. It was the drunk. And so that's what a geek is. So when you call somebody a geek, it's just one of those terms that's always like anyway, just going back and like reading up on the movie Freaks, and when they have like the circus geek in that, and that's just one that I'm like, I don't like that term necessarily.
Well, don't think that word usage stays static. It's just like we were talking about earlier, that everybody's perception changes, the use of language changes, and geek is no longer used in the majority.
Geek is used like somebody that is actually very, very knowledgeable about something that they like, a series of Star Wars. Like, you like everything Star Wars and you know everything about it, you're a geek about it, and people make it trendy. But then you have the people that are wannabes, and then when you're talking about something that they're supposed to be geek about and they don't know shit about it, they're like, okay.
But that's
and it depends who's using it as well.
Well, you hear people that refer to themselves that way, and it's not like that you need to pass a litmus test. You like stuff, you want to call yourself a nerd, a geek, but that's fine. I don't give a shit at the end of the day. But I hear people use that term so liberally that this is probably somebody that never really had a problem fitting in. They never felt like they were a weirdo at all. And they say that they're a total comic book nerd, but they've never bought a comic book in their life. They just like to go to Marvel movies on the weekend. That's everybody, though. That's popular culture now. That's everything. And it's not, you can call yourself whatever you want to, but in my mind, because of that thing that you're talking about with perception, I have a very specific image in my mind of the comic book nerd, of somebody that that obsesses over like The Simpsons or something like that, somebody that knows that kind of that material inside and out. I don't think that most people that say they're a Star Wars nerd or geek, they probably spent too much time on Wikipedia. Like, most people aren't getting into it like on that level. But I'm glad that they get to make these huge budget movies, and they look great, and they get to have fun with it because they're goddamn expensive. So it can't just be the the deep nerds. We need other people to like this stuff too to keep it going. So I'm fine with that. Sorry,
there's those people who use language to try and fit in, and they sort of read the room and go, okay, this sort of stuff's becoming more popular now. I'm going to claim that I'm part of that crowd. But the people who were there from the beginning, the people like when we were talking about Obi-Wan last week, and we were saying, when I was in 5th class, I was running a thing at a Fate where I played the audio recordings from the albums that I bought of the story of Star Wars. Yeah. And I would sit there and play, and people would come in and have a break and listen to it, and I could quote the freaking thing from beginning to end. That's
geek. That's geek.
Yes. And the real geeks sort of sit there and just go,
exactly. Unimpressed.
What you like. Until you can quote this scene to me word for word, you can go away.
And I'll tell you, like, part of talking about like when you give yourself a denomination, part of me thinking of trying to be unbiased is trying to be counterintuitive. So the way I see things is like qualities. Usually, we should not give ourselves qualities. Others give us qualities. Because when we give ourselves qualities, like people that say, oh, I am good or I am honest, like those are qualities. Or I am a geek. Those are qualities that are given to us by others because they are seeing it from outside and they can confirm what we are. We cannot confirm what we are because we're being biased. So we're gonna think that we are what we want to be, not what we really are. Because you see, like we're gonna confuse our ego with our super ego, for example.
Well, you become an egomaniac if you're trying to decide what you're like, basically.
And I mean, well, a maniac would like to like everything that everybody likes, so they are liked.
It's interesting that you become, you know, geeks slash nerds out of necessity. You know, you have a particular thing
Fitting.
that
That's
you
that's like
love.
that's like the new age fever. Is fitting in. Is being liked. Is being the spotlight. You know.
It's almost, there was for me, my experience, and it was just for me. I almost would rather be invisible than be noticed when I was younger. Now I obviously have something where I'm far more comfortable. I'm doing this and I do this kind of thing all the time, where so I'm more comfortable in my own skin. But there was a point in time where the idea of self-identifying, I just wanted to kind of be in the background and not noticed, and didn't want anybody to pay attention to me, because that kind of any recognition in a public space was very uncomfortable for me for a long
Social
time.
ninja.
Yeah, yeah. That see, but that indicates like some level of skill, and there was no fluidity in my movement. There was nothing that was graceful about the way that I moved through society. It was just all elbows and knees, just tripping all over myself. So,
Well,
and
everybody's
that's
awkward.
confidence. What you're talking about?
yeah.
But
That's merely
everybody's
confidence. What
awkward
you're talking
in that
about?
phase where you're discovering yourself. Everybody. It's just some people are better at hiding it than others.
True.
You've got the social chameleons, the ones that want to be liked by everybody, so they go with the flow. They try to like the things that most people like and be in the in conversations, but they're sort of burying themselves. They don't have a self. They're just part of the crowd. There's no individuality to them. And I think
they cannot go in depth into anything that you discuss with them.
But yeah, exactly. They're really shallow. They're all surface.
Yeah.
They're no depth. But the thing is that those people almost don't exist. They're just part of a crowd. They don't have any individuality. And people like us that didn't fit in, it's because we were individuals we didn't fit in. We didn't go with the crowd. We didn't agree with everybody. We didn't say, oh, yeah, that movie was great. That was a piece of shit. I wouldn't watch that again. It was terrible.
Everybody like you, Sharnado. Like, what the fuck? I refuse to watch that.
Everyone else. Like, no, you can't say that. Go over there. We don't want to talk to you. You don't agree with us. It's like
you can ask the guys, Chris. Like I'm weird and proud.
But the beautiful thing about the internet, and having grown up before the internet, I'm absolutely aware of this fact, and a lot of people who grew up with the internet are not, is that the internet enables you to find your people. And this group of people here is my people. I mean, we have so much fun talking about stuff we love. And I feel like everyone should have that opportunity. And it doesn't matter what you love, find your people and feel at home, feel comfortable, get to have these conversations. It will give you such a reward in your life that your living will be much more worthwhile.
I don't disagree with you at all, but there is that gross negative side of people finding their tribe when their tribe is up to no good. When in this country, in the United States, we have a lot of issues with people finding their people and being kind of moved to extreme views because they feel normal and they feel justified in having these fringe thoughts, or they're pushed into this, when they feel like an outsider and they gravitate towards an accepting group, whatever that is. And that group is they have some pretty heinous beliefs, and, the desire to find your family, to find people that accept you can lead you down some pretty negative, gross, horrible places where you have, kind of what happened on January 6th here and those kinds of things. And it's just not to get political in that sense, but that's the other side to it, the downside of the internet to me, where I think something that we need to do is find things that are outside of ourselves and our own comfort, and listen to people who have different ideas, the people that see beauty in things that you don't like. And, that we have an agreed upon opinion about certain things. If it's in sci-fi, having that conversation opened up more and more. So there's different things that are being brought into it instead of the, 3 properties that everybody loves. If you're talking about something that's a little bit more off the beaten path, or maybe something that needs to be recontextualized and re-examined, maybe it's time to go back and look at Star Trek 4 again, because it, at the time, maybe people didn't quite get how fun that movie was and what they were trying to do. And those kinds of things I think are really positive and fun. And it's where there's not that angry vitriol that you have on the internet, which is the thing that I'm not comfortable with necessarily. And as a dad, I look at my kids growing up now, and I think of the world that they're in, with a 12-year-old who's asking to have Snapchat and TikTok and those kinds of things put on his phone. I didn't have to navigate that shit. And I'm at a loss for how to guide him through it, because I didn't have to experience that as a kid. And the world's a lot harder for them now because of the internet, I think.
Well, yeah, a lot of stuff comes to them that just we would never come in contact with. That's very, very true. My son's 9, so I took the approach with child rearing, at least for helping him deal with the world, because he's got mild autism as well, so he's got that to deal with. So we've been very aware of understanding how he interacts with the world, and both my wife and I are in the science field, so we took the approach of explain everything. I mean, anytime he has a question, we explain it. Like there's nothing to be hidden. There's no places where you don't talk about things. Everything is in the open. And I feel it's been very successful in that I think he has a lot better filters for things than other kids who just don't understand what's going on because their parents have said, no, we don't talk about that in this house.
Yeah.
And it's not a case that he's interacting with a lot of things that he shouldn't at his age, but we explain things to him at his level. And, he knows where babies come from. He knows that adolescence involves a lot of changes to his body and that he'll get interested in one sex or the other. We haven't specified, what he should do. It's up to him. He gets to make his own choices, and we give him guidance without telling him, you must think this, you must think that, because he's an individual. And treating a child like that, I feel, is the best way to go, because then he's got the right filters so that he's not going to go down the wrong paths, and he's not afraid of coming to us with any problems, that then we can help guide him without judging him, and he will have a life that gives him a way to move forward without having these speed humps and roadblocks and pit traps that other kids will fall into because they don't have that understanding.
Well, and my 6-year-old he has autism as well, and he is autistic, and it's something where you have to think about the world in a different way, because he processes information differently than our 12-year-old does. He can handle things in a way that he's very literal about everything. And so like a week ago, there's an age gap between me and my wife. My wife is 9 years younger than me. He said, Dad, I need to spend more time with you because you're going to die before Mom does. So I'll get to hang out with Mom more after you die. And it's like a very sweet sentiment, but it sounds super dark. But it's like that's a 6-year-old saying that. So, but there's the joy that he experiences life with. I am envious of him. The way that he views the world, I swear I learn more from him about perception than he will ever learn from me. Seeing the world through his eyes has opened up. It teaches me so much.
Pablo Picasso spent the half of our life, first half of our life, trying to learn how to be adults, and then we spend the other half trying to remember how to be kids.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah,
I never
it is that.
Awesome.
And I mean, I wanted to put in a nutshell what an anime was for you. An anime is an animated series for adults that adults think is for kids.
Yeah.
Like I used to watch animes, and my parents were like, "Oh, that's like cartoons." I'm like, "No, dude, that's like cartoons." But how you happy to watch it? That's fine.
I don't know. You go if you're in a video store, or if they still have those where you are, or you happen to be going to somewhere where they sell a bunch of Blu-rays, and you look through the anime section. A lot of that stuff doesn't look like it's made for kids. A lot of that stuff looks like it would have been behind a red curtain, when I
Yeah,
was a kid in the back of the
yeah.
store. So
Robert has shown me some
Well,
gruesome shit that I'm like, "Hey, what the fuck?"
Yeah,
Japan
had a
certainly
specific.
doesn't go. It's animated. It's for kids. That's
Here's
not
the
how
thing:
it's supposed to be.
Japan too. Japan likes to juggle a lot with taboos. So
Yeah.
they're like,
Oh
fuck
yeah, for
taboos,
sure.
and they just throw it all up there. so they throw all the social nuances. So whoever watches it, like, you gotta be comfortable with anything because they don't give a shit.
Robert, we had that exact conversation in the Darling in the Franks episode at the end of season 1. Remember?
Yes, we
Covered
did.
it well.
I had and it's kind of funny that Giancarlo's mentioned that, because I have a specific movie saved, and this is a movie that I had in when I was in high school, and that I usually put, so people can watch it, for those people who say that anime is for kids. And I play that movie for Giancarlos, how long did you
10
watch it
minutes,
before you
10
had to
minutes,
stop it?
10
Yeah,
minutes. It was too
he
much.
had to stop it at he had to
And I
stop
like
it at 10
gory
minutes.
shit. I like gory shit, but like this was like too much, man. It
Too
was
much
just
of
disgusting.
everything.
Which one was it?
Oh, this Kidoji?
It was one that it was one like with giant cocks flying around and vaginas that spit cocks from it. It was just disgusting, bro. It
So
was
I
like,
had the
shit,
movie.
this is just.
Not representative of anime. Okay, this is way out on the
Oh
fringe.
man,
There
this
were
is
Nazis.
like
There were
19 late
Nazis there.
80s, late 80s
It's in the
anime.
80s, yeah. So yeah, that was my movie, the
Oh
one
my god, I
I
couldn't
had
watch 10
saved
minutes.
up. For people that say anime is for kids, it's like, oh, it's for kids, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why this.
my house. I have a movie
And they
saved for that.
traumatize them.
That's
Well,
more of my
you're
perception of
doing.
anime, is that side of stuff. It's that was the stuff I was exposed to. There was a lot of things with tentacles, the little bits of anime that I've seen that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with, and just made me feel like, wow, I don't need to see that again. I'm good. I know that's not the scope of this entire art form, but I haven't really dove in.
You
My few
understood that
exposures have been weird.
you understood that there shouldn't be a first time for everything.
I can give you some good recommendations for sci-fi anime.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
There's one called Steins Gate.
Oh, we got to do that one.
We have to do Steins Gate. You guys have got to watch that. It's basically it's a time travel anime, but it's actually jumping what they call world lines. So going back and changing the past and then living through an alternate future than the one he's lived through previously, because he's trying to save somebody's life. And the main character goes through such pain. I really felt for the guy. When you're watching something and your heart is hurting because you can just feel what this guy is going through, trying to save this one person who just keeps dying on him. And he goes back. A bit ReZero-ish, but this was like, I'm a scientist. This is from a scientist's perspective, and it really was harsh. And the beauty of this thing is they got a second season, and what they did was they actually inserted the second season at episode 23 out of 25 in the first season. So it was another world line. It was a beta world line, and you watch up to episode 22, and then you watch 23 beta. And you watch the whole second season, and it loops back around to 23 alpha.
That's actually really interesting. That's smart.
So the season goes like this, then it goes boink, it goes up here, comes back down again, reconnects, and goes to the end of the first season. And it was brilliant. It's just, you want time travel, you got to watch that one. It's just,
there was a pulp novel that I read. It was like a hard-boiled detective book, and I can't remember the name of it, but all the chapters so chapter 1 was chapter 3, chapter 2 was chapter 8, and so they never had a name. It was just the first chapter, second chapter. It was giving the order and where it would appear. So you're finding out bits and pieces of information out of chronological order, and it was a scattershot, but it was such a brilliant conceit of naming it that way and kind of moving through that and seeing it all play out that way. So you're getting back, and the very ending of it where it all comes together is in chapter 1, which is like the 10th or 12th chapter. I can't remember what the number was there. And it reminded me when you're saying that, just because of do you think of something like Memento? If you've seen that, where it's going in reverse.
That's a hell of a movie.
Yeah, I was thinking of that while you were saying that. Yeah,
that movie's badass.
And I think about like these things where the idea of when you have timelines and the structure behind it has to be really methodical. Like Memento to me is a very linear movie. It's just moving backwards. So, but if it's put in a different order, that movie doesn't work. But something like to get back to that, Safety Not Guaranteed, when Kristen Bell shows up, I think that you could read this as one of two ways. And I think it says more about you and how you view these characters, that even knowing what you know in the end, I think there's room to see this as they didn't impact the past, and this never happened, this traumatic event, that he has a perception of it that was never based in reality, and he just happens to be able to figure out time travel as well. Or he did actually go back and affect the past, and that has happened at this point, and it shows they're successful. And I think either one of those reads is totally valid, and it probably just says more about.
He's explaining to his co-worker about this. Actually, he's telling them that they split their realities, they branch out.
Yep.
I realize one of the cool things that happened on that I can recall that I really like and seen in this movie is when Audrey Plaza's character, she realized she's actually talking to the supposed woman that died.
Yeah.
And she's interviewing this woman. And you're like, hold up a second. She's alive. Didn't she die? So at that particular moment, something that I find very interesting is that your perception actually, or your opinions actually split. You're like, okay, either he was lying and he's actually crazy, or he actually went back in time and changed the past, which in my opinion is what happens in time travel. And I have a lot of people that argue this. I respect the opinions because all the opinions are good.
Grandfather theory.
In my opinion, there's a universe where she died, and there's a universe when she was saved. So he actually, with that choice, going back to the past, he actually split. So now we have two, and now that character, I think her name was Darius, Audrey Plaza's character.
Yes.
She actually was forced into a different alternative universe with the choice that Kenneth did. And I find that to be really interesting. When I was watching that, I was like, whoa, maybe I'm overthinking this.
It's sad for her because she's in love with him, and then he's going back with his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's where it got complicated.
So it's like she's gonna be let down at the end.
the moment they kissed, I went, oh shit!
Oh no!
now we've got to.
And they keep on singing, like showing her things that are for the girl. So it's like, what's going on in here, man? She's just killing herself.
But the whole thing about time travel is it's experiential. So there's only one person who has experience of both timelines, and that's him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he seems crazy, because he says one thing and it turns out there's another. But it's the thing he wanted to achieve. He wanted her to live. So did he fix the timeline so she lived?
Damn.
And, the best way to fix a timeline is to change things a little, not a lot. So the history for her is that he drove the car into the lounge room, not a random drunk bass player. So like he modified things so she survived. But then you got to ask yourself, well, if he wanted her to survive, wouldn't he then have made a move on her? But then she was saying that, I liked him, but he didn't fit in with the rest of my life, so I couldn't go out with him. So did she turn him down after he saved her life? But she doesn't know he saved her life because only he has experienced that other reality. So it asked a lot of questions, this movie.
Did he go back and leave his body there of his 16-year-old self and frame himself for that situation so that, or, create that and hung it on his own head so that he would have to have that in that timeline? But that's because he's himself as he's experienced it. He doesn't even actually experience that entire timeline where that happened. Because otherwise, why would she had to see him there? And so, but if she saw a 45-year-old version of him, she wouldn't have, had that reaction. So it had to be, a teenage version of him.
Yeah, he must have done something to convince his younger self to do this. Like, go and drag this drunk guy out of the car and drive the car into her house.
I think I might have a solution for that. Remember that box inside that vehicle in the woods?
The mossy tow truck.
Yeah.
So supposedly this has been since it was a kid, it's been there. So I was thinking about that too. When that scene, how is that even possible? And one thing that me and Giancarlo have talked, especially in our episode on Arrival, and you guys should, listen to that one and get the details, because I don't want to go into really all the details in that. But we are, we are third-dimensional beings. So for us, time travel is linear, and it typically is.
Our mortality defines that time travel is linear. If we would never die, it would not be linear.
So, but here's the thing: for a fourth-dimensional being, you experience death and birth at the same time.
Right.
You experience everything together. So for them, it's easy to go back to a point in the past and change what needed to be changed to get the results that you want in the future, because they experience the entire timeline all at once and they know what needs to be changed. For us in third-dimensional beings, we don't have that foresight. We know what happened in the past. We can try to guess, but we don't know that changing that or something that
they screw us up, man. They gave us a foreskin, but not the foresight.
Well, but changing that specific point in the past might change something that actually affects negatively in our future. So what
it's tricky.
Is he has an avenue that could help with this, and you guys let me know what you think. He has that box.
This is medicine to rubber.
So he could actually write on that box, and in the future he reads, and he can actually make change and slight change to the point where the future might go in the direction that he wants. I know it's never going to be exact because we're still third-dimensional beings, but he has
and the ripple effect that they do not control outer elements, so they cannot control reactions. They can just estimate.
Now, does that make any sense?
Oh, totally. I'm glad I'm not a fourth dimensional being, because I just couldn't stop fiddling. I'd be like, just like playing a stringed instrument with a billion strings. I'd be like, what does this string do? What does that?
Oh my god!
I'd be doing it forever. Screwing everything up. I just couldn't leave it alone.
So the fact that you see the teenage hymns, driving the car, does that make any sense? I was thinking about that, and my problem is I overthink things, so maybe this makes no sense, but it kind of makes sense to me as far as that as an explanation to that.
The movie rightfully doesn't get buried in that stuff because it worked out, because we don't really need it. It's fun as a intellectual exercise to go down those paths, but I don't think it helps a movie. It won't satisfy. It opens up more questions than it actually, and it distracts from the narrative in the end. And I think that
everything always does that.
Yeah, and so really, but time travel movies essentially are almost always about regret. They're about
Oh, yes.
going back to
Totally.
change or fear of the future. And so you have this idea of being able to make an impact on the things that you can't have an impact on. And that's really what it's about. And they almost always come down to the same idea that by going back, you're actually destroying things and that you shouldn't mess with it and you should move on. Usually 9 times out of 10, that's like what the general moral of time travel stories are. And in this one, I don't think it necessarily falls into that category.
No.
But I think, it does in the sense that they're going.
They emphasize on the cautionary issue of not messing up with it. Kenneth emphasized on that, but the way that they imply it went, it seems positive.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And but these are all characters that they learn to live in the moment, in the present.
Yes.
And they find happiness not through impacting the past, but connecting with their current situation. All 4 of these main characters, that's how they do it. And in fact,
that's a beautiful message.
That doesn't it's a wonderful message. It's such a great idea. And I think there's so much truth in that you need to acknowledge, recognize, and move through your past so that you can accept and embrace your present. So, and be prepared.
And I mean, and understand that the past cannot be changed. It can't be changed. Yep. You can only learn from it so you don't repeat a mistake. But other than that, and to know that nobody can tell you Tarot this said this or the Zodiac says this, your future is not written in stone, and you get to decide. You're the author of your own life. You know. So at the end of the day, anything.
Even in a time travel story, we know that the future, the past, and the present are all malleable.
That's what I didn't like the time traveler's wife, because he predetermined that he was going to die at a specific age, and he could have changed it, but he still didn't change.
Well, I can tell you something.
Sometimes you feel like you're drowning.
I can tell you something extra based on the fact that the future is malleable, or future, past, present, and future is malleable. We don't know until there's more to that story, because remember, his daughter is a time traveler.
Yeah,
so
but
we
I mean,
don't know if she goes back and actually saves him.
It's very. I doubt it, because it's very random when he goes and gets shot. I doubt that this girl is gonna find out what happens.
Well,
and I mean, they imply like she keeps on meeting with a past version of her dad that was before she was born.
If you read the book, she controls it, not like him. He had no control. He could be washing the dishes, and all of a sudden, poof, disappears. And he actually, it showed up in the movie where she came back to a specific time, and she told him, "I'm your daughter." It's like, how do you know? It's like I can control it.
Oh,
she can control where she goes.
Yeah, he could not control it.
So that's what I'm saying.
It was living in paranoia.
That exact situation happens in Steins Gate as well. It's a fun little trope. The child coming back as an adult or a late teen and saying, I'm your child. And it's like, oh shit, really? I haven't met the person I have you with yet. Oh crap. What do I do now? It's like cat amongst the pigeons. Thank you.
Did any of you guys read or see 11/23/63? The Stephen King novel. It's a time travel story where a guy, basically he finds a portal that will take him back to 1960. And so he decides that he's going to go back and stop the assassination of JFK. So you can go back, go back in time, but it goes to a specific date whenever you go through the portal. All the time that you go through, so if you go back there and you hang out for a week has passed in the current timeline. So when you come back, you've aged a week. You never stop aging. So in that time, you're always gone for that long. And so to go back and do this, he has to stay in the past for 3 years and to do it. But whenever you try to affect change in the future, and this is the reason I'm bringing it up, or you try to affect change in the past to affect, what happens in the future, the past wants to head in a certain direction. So there's forces that you can feel it pulling everything in this certain direction. It's not exactly fate, but it's something that all the forces of the world are headed in this one direction, which is the timeline it would have headed down originally. But if you're trying to make these big changes, you'll start coughing, and you'll feel like this immense pressure around you, and you can feel like it's physically takes a huge toll on you to go through that. And I like that idea as well, that if everybody is headed down this pathway, that it wants to go in that direction, that the rest of existence is fighting you making this change because it affects everybody else down that timeline. So I kind of liked that idea.
Doctor Who covers that as fixed points in time and space.
Yeah.
That you can't change.
I really like that because, like, if you, for example, want to change the flow of a river, you know, it is possible, but it's going to take a lot of effort.
You can bifurcate that sucker, and we do it all the time.
But then, you know, if there's a ravine,
and here I am thinking of changing the magnetism of Earth.
There's only one ravine. You would have to dig a massive channel to move that river.
Yeah.
And there's only physically one way it can really go, and that's sort of the same deal.
Not over there, because you're in the land of down under.
Well, our rivers flow backwards because we're there's a quote by Lao Tzu, just before we get too far away from where this fit in, but there's a quote by Lao Tzu that says, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you're anxious, you are living in the future. And if you're at peace, you are living in the present. And I feel like that statement really fits with this movie, because you see that all the people who want to go back and change the past are somewhat depressed. The main characters start out that way, and they move through anxiousness when certainly she's anxious when she discovers that she could go back and change what happened. So her past starts to become her future, and she's anxious about that. And then when she falls for the guy, she's at peace because she's living in the present. She's finding happiness.
Have you noticed?
Now.
You said something that woke up a question on me for you guys. Have you noticed that 99% of time traveling property, they want to go to the past. They don't want to go to the future. Automatically.
Except for Back to the Future.
Yeah, well, but like most of the things that involve time traveling, people wants to go back. They don't want to go in the future for no given reason. They want to change what happened instead of accepting it.
Well, if they're at peace with themselves, then they want to go to the future. If they're feeling regret, then they want to go to the past.
But it's not the mainstream thing, is what I'm saying. Like, to me, it's not mainstream. Like Back to the Future is an exception. If you look at, it's what I'm saying, 99% of time traveling property, movies, shows, or whatever, they want to go and change something in the past. They don't want to go to the future to do anything.
I wonder.
It's easier to write. You know, when you write the past, you can get that right. You can go back to any point in history. If you're creating a property, and you can look at all these characters you get to play with. If you're going to the future, you're having to spin that whole cloth and create an entire.
Oh, it's an adventure. It's an adventure if you're going to the future, for sure. But I mean, at the same time, they never miss out to include the cautionary tale of the dangers of trying to go change the past. It could make it worse than what it was.
There are a couple examples. And not to spoil the movie, but I don't think anybody here's seen it, but Happy Accidents is a movie where you're watching them and you're watching somebody in present time, but they're actually from the past. So this is somebody who has gone to the future, but it takes place right now. And it's very similar to Safety Not Guaranteed, where it's a science fiction time travel movie that could have been filmed for $1.50 with, they put it together with bubblegum wrappers. It's just that kind of movie. And I think that those are my favorite kind of sci-fi films because they're about all sci-fi is really about ideas. It's about philosophy. It's about thought. It's, Star Trek. That's all about, that's highly political. It's highly social. It's dealing with ideas.
Wholesome. That's the word that I have for it. To me, they're wholesome. You're watching it, you feel like it has everything that it needs to have. You don't need to have expectations for it. Like, it's a movie that is fulfilling that without you needing it.
So wholesome meaning complete, not wholesome meaning because wholesome isn't a word I would use to describe Alien or Blade Runner. But I can see if you're saying wholesome meaning it's a satisfying story, I could see that's just a different.
But maybe he means satisfying.
To me, to me, guarantee no safety no guarantee is wholesome too because
Yeah. Oh, it's a
you see
sweet movie.
a self-redemptive evolution of each character throughout the movie,
I really
and you get
like
to
that.
know them for like you get like they are a shell when they start, but by the end of the movie, you actually get to see their heart, who they are,
Well,
just
look
like
at the
explained,
character
and they were
like
play.
I'm
Jeff.
sorry, just Jake Johnson's character. He's the guy that works at the paper. He's such a scumbag. Right away, you hate this guy. But by the time he's crying,
The
smoking a
movie
cigarette,
when
riding
he's
a
with the
go
girl
kart,
and he's like, "Move
when
with
he's,
me."
you're dying laughing when he's going
Yes,
around crying on that go kart. But it's so,
yeah,
he's broken, and you're like, and that's when you kind of fall in love with the guy, and you're like,
you
oh,
feel it.
I want good things to happen because he genuinely just wanted that kid to like have a good time that night, and there was a sweetness to him that you really didn't see prior to him hanging out with that kid.
Yep.
Going back to
Yeah.
regret, I
People
mean,
just before you go, people admire other people for their strengths and love them for their weaknesses.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
yeah. And
Yep.
you know, it seems to me like mostly everybody here had regrets.
Oh yeah.
The way that Jeff, I'm sorry, Jake Johnson's character, was trying to, in a way, help, you know, our not the character. Um, at first you think, you know, is he really like? Is he pulling him? You know, even the character itself, thinking, you know, maybe this guy is just, you know, making fun of me or poking fun of me, but he truly wanted to help him because in a way he sees himself in him when he was younger and all the regrets that he had.
Youth is wasted on the young, I believe, fits here quite successfully.
Exactly. And you know, every character in this movie had the same you know,
Except the one, except the girl that he was with. That was a woman that was fully realized. She's made her mistakes. She understands. She's come to terms with her past. She's a
Yep.
grown-ass woman. She knows who she is. She doesn't need to be validated by Jake Johnson's character. And in fact, when he starts saying move to the city with me, she sees what he was actually getting out of this and is able to call bullshit. And in a way, there's a part of me that it takes a minute for me to accept that because I really liked watching the two of them together.
And
so
you're rooting for him.
You're pulling for him, but then you're like, no, she's right. He is not ready to be with her at this point.
Yeah.
He's got some growing to do before he's ready to be with this woman.
I felt the same way that you did. Like I felt hurt at the beginning, but like shit. But she's right. Like this guy's talking about sleep with an intern before because he didn't want to face his ass. Like, and you're gonna bring the girl through. Like she look at her where she is. She doesn't need to go to where you are.
Yeah.
She had her own boundaries and she wasn't prepared to throw her life away like a teenage girl would and drop everything.
Just like Chris said, like she knew what she wanted, but like him, he didn't really. He was trying to figure that out. You know,
he was living in the moment, and he wants that moment to never end. But he's
living
not
in the
really
moment
thinking.
without future.
Exactly, he's not really thinking
that's a
ahead.
tricky thing.
Players like that tend to be big teenagers. They haven't matured past that. Let me get everything out of all these people.
Stop talking about me, Ray.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh wow, a great one of the cool things that I like about this movie and the fact that I feel, at least my perception on this, it feels like this movie is kind of like chicken soup. It's how you go through the entire movie where, you know, anyone could be watching this and thinking, okay, this is not sci-fi. Until the very end, when you realize, crap, this is sci-fi. They go through all that insinuation and all that stuff at the end to make you really think through the story before they actually say, here it is. This is what was all along. I really like that. I don't think I seen, to various levels, I've seen different movies in the past that does this, but this movie does it I want to say 90 to 95% of its duration. Is that what is your thought on that? I mean, and that's the reason why I was kind of curious um, to see Giancarlo's opinion, because this movie, when you first start watching it, it appears to be something that is not. And it becomes clear, I think, halfway through the movie, and then obviously at the end. And there, again, this is the reason why I was kind of curious to see Giancarlo's opinion on this movie, because I don't think I ever showed him a movie like this. I like to call soft sci-fi, if that is a word.
Yeah, I think that's a good description.
It's not overt, that's for sure. So it gives itself room to breathe in a way where most sci-fi, you're watching it and you realize that it was something deeper in the end, and that's where the switch happens, that you realize this was actually about something else, that this was about a larger societal issue, this was about racism, this was about war, this was about something else that it had on its mind the whole time, and it just reveals itself later. In this one, it's about it all front loaded with the emotion, and then you find out in the end that actually this was a sci-fi story, but that payoff in the end is so satisfying for these characters. And I literally, every time I watch this movie, I shed a few tears. Like, I am so happy when it lights up and they go back in time. I'm literally getting goosebumps thinking about that image right now, because it's so joyous. I just feel so good to watch that. And it's that kind of thing where I'm watching it with my wife and I'm kind of putting my head next to the pillow a little bit deeper and deeper, so I'm not embarrassed that like this silly, goofy little movie makes me cry every time. But yeah, it gets me. This movie has me dead rights.
And I tell you,
Nothing
like,
wrong with that at all.
to me, the reason is because it's not so much about the genre of sci-fi. It's more about the people on it.
Yeah.
What the movie is about.
It's the emotional payoff at the
Yeah.
end. Basically, and until that final scene, it's is this guy a nutter or is he a time traveler? And you want him to be a time traveler by the end. You can see that he's put his life into this work. And when they go into the garage and they see the blueprints and the layouts and all the shit on the wall, they go, "What? This guy isn't an." Maybe he's legit. Holy shit! And you go like and it ticks up slowly. There's these little steps taking you up to the precipice. And
Baby steps.
when they notice the federal agents following him, they go like, "Shit, he is being followed." He was going on and on and on about that, and there was no hint that this was actually happening.
And they were laughing like it was just he's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it always undercuts it. So when they break into that facility to steal the parts for the time machine, and they're having that company party, and you're like, okay, clearly he's crazy. Like, it feels like it's okay, this is a real facility, there's something going on here. Then they just pull the rug out. So anytime you start to kind of believe in this guy a little bit, they instantly just give you doubt. And then it's by design. It's such a wonderfully well balanced and well written film. I think the way that they deliver information in this movie is so precise. It's for a movie that had so much improvisation in it, it's very, very specific in the way that it tells the story, and I really appreciate this film. So,
and I think in small ways, each character can relate to the public.
Yeah,
it would have been a complete different movie if it wasn't for that ending. Completely.
Oh yeah.
It still would have been a satisfying movie, because you cared for these characters. I wouldn't have recommended it for this show, obviously, if it wasn't for that ending. And I was a little bit apprehensive about recommending this film because it's not something that's so obvious. But it was something that when I think of sci-fi, this is the kind of movie that I think of, that is just so based in humanity. Because to me, the best sci-fi is wrestling with what it means to be human.
And it brings it back to reality. And this is another thing that I like. You can relate.
Mm-hmm.
It is a sci-fi movie, but typically, and let me say it, typically, a sci-fi movie, you can kind of relate to certain aspects of it, but it's like, okay, you're in the year 2075, and they're flying cars.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is just your average day with your average person, which, by the way, there's a slight possibility this guy might be nuts. Um, and that's what I love about this movie. This movie is it brings it home.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. There's two types of sci-fi to me. There's the escapism. There's the Star Wars. There's the Battlestar Galactica. There's the Babylon 5. There's the stuff that's way out there, and you think like, wouldn't it be great to get away from the everyday and go and do something far out like that? It's escapism. Your mind wants to get out there. Your mind wants to be somewhere else, being somebody else, doing something else that's exciting and sci-fi, right? That's the escapism sci-fi. And then you have the, as you said, the back home sci-fi. There's the, part of your life is looking back at it and going, what if? How could it have been better? Most of the people that I know that are into sci-fi and things of this nature have regrets about their past, what they didn't do, how they didn't fit in, what they would have liked to have happened. There's a series that I'm listening to at the moment, light novel series called My Teenage Romantic Comedy Was Messed Up As I Expected.
Man, these titles that you throw out.
I know, but it's translation from Japanese, so yeah. It's just a different way of presenting these things. But some of the titles are really long and really out there. But the writer of this series is writing it because of the regrets he has for his past, and he is writing what he knows, which is what you're told to do, write what you know. But he's writing about the regrets of his high school years because he was an outsider. He was a loner, and he knows what it's like. And he's crafting this story that we can relate to because of his regrets, what he didn't get to do. And he said, one of my greatest regrets was I never got to go on a date with a girl in a school uniform. I wanted to do that. I wanted to have a date when I was in high school with a girl in a school uniform, and it never happened. And you can instantly relate to that regret if you wanted something like that and it never happened for you. Yeah. If you were too out there, if you were too different, if you couldn't relate to girls in high school and you couldn't make that happen for yourself, you can immediately grasp that and understand that regret. And this movie is exactly the same way. You can understand those regrets. If anybody lost a parent when you were growing up, you can immediately understand that regret. If you met somebody that you wanted to have a relationship with and you just didn't fit into their world and it never happened, you can understand that regret, and it's part of you, and therefore you're part of this movie. And that way you connect to it. And the science fiction part of it is almost like just, a trapping. It's not the movie. The movie is about these people regretting what didn't happen and trying to rediscover it. The scumbag Jeff is trying to rediscover it through linking up with the person that he was interested in.
Cautionary tale to no.
And didn't go through with it, and Darius wants to go back and save a mother, and this guy wants to go. The guy who's creating the time machine, who's obviously brilliant, but nobody believes that he's brilliant, is doing it to try and save the girl that was killed by the bass player, and it feels like he's either completely nuts because she's alive, or he succeeded, but didn't get with her because he didn't fit with her. That's what we find out, that even though it looks like he succeeded, because right at the very end, you see that he has created a time machine, that she now exists, but he still didn't get his happy ending. So even if you can change the past and fix the major problem, there's still a whole bunch of minor problems that means that you will not be successful in your personal goal.
I love this idea that you talk about with escapism side of sci-fi and this sort of grounded sci-fi. And there's one film that when I think about that manages to thread the needle, I think, between both of those worlds really well, is Contact. And I know you guys covered it. I listened to that episode, and I think, one of the things that always stood out to me about that movie, and I know you guys have covered it, but there's an interview with Jodie Foster in the DVD when they used to have all those DVD features. And she talks about how if she was to have directed the movie instead of Zemeckis, she would have done the movie just in a cabin with the scientist and the preacher having these conversations. because in her estimation, that's what the film's completely about. And I actually agree with her in that that's what the heart of the film is. It's about that, the duality of science versus religion, and the spiritual versus the, this science side, and are those two worlds able to combine, and how can they coexist in the universe? And I love the idea of just following those conversations for a little while. Now, I liked the Zemeckis version of it because I like the big, loud distraction, escapism, and I think there's a lot of beauty in that. But all those things are just there to support that underlying story. And I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way to tell those things. But that's like, I feel like in my mind, I see Safety Not Guaranteed and Contact almost as very, very similar pieces, that I would do that as a double feature in my mind, because they kind of scratch a similar itch with sci-fi to me.
I would have to agree.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a point.
Sorry to completely derail it, guys.
No, not at all. You can ask Robert. Contact, when it came out, I was a kid. I was like 5, 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie traumatized me. Like, I had to watch it like 8 times in a row, back to back. And I was 6 or 7 years old. But I was like, wow. And I mean, I have a sense of my singularity and my own self since I'm like 8 or 10, like 8 or 9. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm still the same person in my head that I am today, but with more knowledge of life. More fucked up.
Yeah.
So that movie, to me, like, you can ask Robert, like, I would say that's one of my first sci-fis that I'm like, I love that movie. And don't get tired of watching it. The message that it has is beautiful.
Yes.
He opens a lot of enigmas that we have in life, and questions not answered that really don't need an answer to be understood.
Yeah.
Hey, Robert, I never did the plot summary.
Do you have the Chinese version?
I actually tried.
I'm sorry. You spoiled us, man.
I did. I really did. I don't know if you've listened to our Alien podcast.
Not yet. I saw that it just went up last week, but I haven't.
You need to check that one out. But there was a back of the DVD blurb for a Taiwanese bootleg of the movie.
Oh, okay.
And I broke these two guys when I read it out because it was so funny. And we originally thought it was just a translation through a bunch of different Google Translates to get a completely bonkers but still understandable version of the story synopsis. But I've actually tried to do this again with plot synopses or quick synopses of various movies since, and I can't replicate it through Chinese, Japanese, Zimbabwean, Turkish, Afghanistani, and I still can't get it to do anything nearly as epic as that. So unfortunately, I tried it with the one sentence synopsis from IMDb, and it didn't it didn't resonate. Unfortunately, it didn't change very much at all. So
while we were talking, I was actually trying, and I passed it through so many different languages and back to English, and it's still not as funny.
Yeah, no, that was just the pinnacle, and we'll never reach that again, unfortunately.
Yeah, so sad.
If you jump on our Discord and have a look in our memes channel, it's in there, so you can find it in there, or listen to the Alien podcast where
I actually want to listen to that. I'm going to go back for sure
in a very serious voice.
The
the bottle of scotch a day and 6 packs of cigarettes sort of movie voice. I attempt to do very poorly.
Well, were you able to find one for Safety Not Guaranteed? Did you look for one for that or description?
I haven't been able to find a funny bootleg version, but I have the plot from Wikipedia that I can go through if you're willing to sit through it.
Yeah, please. And
sure.
I have something to add to it as well.
Okay.
I have a feeling it'll be a good companion.
So basically, our listeners now need to time travel forward to listen to this, and then time travel back to listen to our discussion of the last nearly 2 hours, because it's out of order. I apologize, but it does kind of fit with.
No, it fits. This was all by design. It was. Yeah, we're
totally.
it's a meta.
Our traveling machine doesn't have really that control.
Well, then you need to iterate and improve.
Are you sure we're not going traveling back to the past?
Maybe we are. Maybe I've traveled from the past of this episode into the future of this episode to give the plot synopsis now.
I'll take that.
That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it.
Because you're making spaghettis on my brain.
Yeah, I'm attempting to. It already looks that way, so it kind of works in that form. So, Safety Not Guaranteed, the 2012 American science fiction rom-com comedy. Darius Britt is an intelligent but disillusioned graduate of the University of Washington who lives at home in Seattle with her widower father, who works as an intern, and she works as an intern in the Seattle magazine. One of the magazine's writer, Jeff Schwensen, proposes to investigate a newspaper classified ad that reads, "Wanted, somebody to go back in time with me. This is not a joke. P.O. Box 91 Ocean View, Washington 99393. You'll get paid after we get back. Must bring your own weapons. I have only done this once before. Safety not guaranteed." Now, I have only done this once before. That is important. Remember that. Jeff's boss, Bridget, approves of his story idea, and Jeff selects his team, Darius and Arnau, a studious University of Washington student interning with the magazine, to diversify his resume for medical school applications. They travel to the seaside community of Ocean View to find and profile a person who wrote the ad. Jeff's ulterior motive is for this out-of-town assignment is to track down his long-lost love interest who lives in the town. Darius discovers the ad was placed by Kenneth Calloway, a stocking clerk at a local grocery store. Not your usual time-traveling main character, as it were. Jeff's attempt to approach Kenneth alienates him, so Jeff orders Darius to make contact. Darius's disaffected attitude serves her well, and she quickly endears herself to Kenneth as she poses as a candidate to accompany him on his mission. While Kenneth is paranoid and believes secret agents are tracking his every move, Darius gains his trust as she participates in a series of training exercises in the woods around his house, and she begins to develop feelings for him. She tells Kenneth about losing her mother when she was young, and her mission is to prevent her mother's death. Kenneth says his mission is to go back to 2001 to prevent the death of his old girlfriend, Belinda, who was killed when someone drove a car into her house. Meanwhile, Jeff tracks down Liz, a fling from his teenage years. Although she is not as attractive as he recalls, they reconnect and sleep together. He asks her to come back to Seattle with him, but she believes this is just another fling for him, and she refuses. Upset at her rejection, Jeff takes Arnau out on the town, and they pick up some young women. Jeff tells Arnau not to waste his youth and convinces him to spend a night with one of the women. The next morning, Jeff receives a phone call from Bridget, who's following up on the team's notes on the story. She informs Jeff that Belinda is still alive and lives an hour away from where they are. During an interview, Darius learns Belinda was only friends with Kenneth, and Kenneth actually was the one who drove into her then boyfriend's house, yet no one was injured. After the interview, Darius is questioned by two government agents who have been following Kenneth and believe that he may be a spy because of his communications with government scientists. They know Kenneth was breaking into labs and stealing equipment. What it actually leaves out is there's a scene before that where Darius helps him steal equipment from a medical facility to help build the time machine. So that's important. I don't know why it's been left out here. Darius returns to Kenneth's house to confront him, but Kenneth rationalizes Belinda is now alive because his time travel mission succeeded. Jeff runs in to warn them that the government agents are also on the property. Kenneth panics and runs to the woods. Darius follows Kenneth, who they've actually left out another important bit where they go into the garage and discover all of the blueprints and the instructions and the notes relating to building the time machine, which builds an important precedent that it maybe he has actually built the time machine, but they're still not sure. Then Darius follows Kenneth, who has boarded the time machine, which is integrated into a small boat on a lake. Darius apologizes for lying to Kenneth, telling him everything else they shared was real, and joins him on the boat. Kenneth tells Darius that their mission is now only to go back for her. Jeff, Arno, and the agents watch as Kenneth and Darius activate the time machine and vanish. A filmed interview, presumably from earlier, shows Kenneth explaining why he chose to enlist a partner for his time travels. Roll credits.
Well done, sir.
So that's our movie. Yeah, I've been doing this a bit now. I'm getting good at it. But yeah, this Wikipedia entry, I think I'm going to have to edit it because it leaves out a couple of really important scenes. The stealing the gear from the lab, which implicates her. She didn't have gloves on, and they left the van behind, so she's totally implicated. And the scene where they go into the garage and discover that all of the blueprints and all of the information pertaining to how he's building the time machine. So that's basically the technobabble, although they don't go into it. But it's a really important scene to solidify his claim that he's building a time machine.
Yeah, it's true.
So they've left them out. So these aren't perfect. These are Wikipedia descriptions of the movie. Or plot
well, I think anybody that hears that will have a good idea of what the film is. And is this something that you guys would recommend to other people? I always feel pretty comfortable recommending this one to people. This is if I was still working in a video store and I put stuff on the recommendations wall when this thing came out, it definitely would have been there to shine a little light on it. Is this something that you would pass on to other people, do you think?
I would strongly recommend this movie because of all the reasons that I spoke before. I don't know exactly how you guys feel, but it's
I'll be for last, Ray. You tell us.
It's such a it's just I feel it was a journey watching this movie, and the ending was a big payoff. That it's just
that also is part of the wholesomeness.
Wife, she wants a part 2.
What did she say?
She wants a part 2.
Oh, she wants a part 2.
She was actually wanting me to forward because she's so used to the Marvel movies.
I think that the movie's not meant to have a part 2, though. I think that the movie's not meant to have a part 2.
If you know Rocio, she wants to forward to the end just to make sure there's not some
I mean, if you could give her a Harry Potter 8, she will have it.
Yeah.
Does she read the last chapter of the book first?
I'm sorry?
Does she read the last chapter of the book first? She wants.
I'm not sure she read them.
No. She's just if she likes something, she will straight.
She wants more of it.
She wants more of it. So
if you get engaged with the characters, if the characters become important to you, that's when you want more of it. It's not necessarily the story.
When you invest yourself.
Did you guys watch Seinfeld at all?
I've watched Seinfeld.
I tried.
Okay. There's a thing in there that George goes into and talks about when you have a good punchline, you make somebody laugh. That's when you leave the room. Because you've made everybody laugh. You're going to leave with a good impression. You just walk out. So he would say something, people would laugh, and he would just instantly leave the room in one of the episodes. And I feel like it's good advice to take in life. And when you're creating something, leave on a high note. I think we have an embarrassment of riches with content. We get too much of things we like. And it's better to be left wanting more from these characters or to imagine in the back of your mind what happens instead of going back to see her mom saved. I mean, I want to spend more time with these characters. But I think we're better off wanting more than actually having that realized.
Kind of what happened with Matrix. How
Exactly what happened with the Matrix.
they keep on bringing it's detrimental to the story. And at the end was like, all right, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like the first movie, the best, and that's it.
Giancarlos, but in the next one it would be you and me.
Matrix.
Yeah.
No, man, like the Trinity thing and Neo, you and I, like, I love you and everything, man, but not that much.
I
Ray.
can't remember who it was now, but there was a movie writer who had a list of his 5 perfect movies, and Matrix was one of them. And he said, well, it was perfect
The first one.
until they decided to make sequels. But yeah, I remember originally seeing Matrix, and we really should do Matrix one day.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, like,
podcast.
what safety no guarantee gives me to me is that satisfactory feeling when you watch a international indie film movie that is good. Like when you watch Slumdog Millionaire, you know, you watch Slumdog Millionaire and you're like, ha ha, ha, you know, and this movie was just like that.
The premise is, where is the payoff in the movie? Now, movies have a whole bunch of little payoffs when you have scenes that really resonate, or the struggling main character or whomever discovers that thing that they needed to know, or achieves that thing that they've been trying to achieve, or realizes what the true goal is and finally starts heading towards it, and you resonate with that because you're still trying to find that in your life, or you look back and you see the similar things happening in your life where you really achieve something, and it resonates. And this movie and Matrix have that same point right at the end where the payoff is. And when you get a payoff at the end, you feel like the story is more rounded, more completed, and you don't feel like you need so much more. As an alternative, movies that have cliffhangers don't have that rounded off finished payout, and that's why you want more, because you want to pay out at the end. You want the happily ever after, especially Robert wants that happily ever after at the end, which makes him feel comfortable that this story is now complete. And if you don't have that, you want more. Now, depending on whether you're creating a series or you're just finishing off a story, you'll have a different sort of ending. And as a writer myself, I look at how do I want this to end? And you have movies and stories and things that end with that satisfactory payout that you feel like you can now put down and walk away and say, I'm happy with that. That's a story. It fits. It's finished. I can walk away now. But if somebody's trying to make a series of movies, you don't want it to end like that because you want to make more money by making sequels. So it depends on whether the story is the important thing or the bottom line is the important thing.
Well, The Matrix is such a great example. I never would have thought of that, but I think you're absolutely 100% correct. And it's that last moment that makes the sequels impossible, because he's Superman. He flies off into the air. That's no longer an interesting story. He has been fully realized. He is a god amongst, I don't know, microchips. So he's somebody that it's like, he's impossible to destroy at that point. That's where the movie ends. It's the full arc is there. Now, if you cut it off before that, you could have had room for story, but you made it so that's kind of difficult. And I feel like Safety Not Guaranteed it's a perfectly complete story. The way that it ends, these two characters got to the exact place that we needed them to get to.
It implies the results.
Yep. You go beyond that, and it's not all those things that you were talking about, all those little moments that were the foundation that makes that payoff so powerful at the end. If you go past that, it's disingenuous and takes away from everything that happened before it.
It's like the whole opposite thing of how Inception ends.
Yeah.
You watch Inception and then you're like, what? But this one is like, yes, nice. You know, it's like you have a gratifying feeling when you finish the movie. That's how good it is. Yeah, this movie is good. I definitely would suggest it.
Nice.
I'm a big believer in context. I spent way too much of my life not understanding what context was, and when I finally cottoned on to what context was, I realized it was everywhere, and it was often more important than the piece of information you were trying to
Yes.
present to the other party. It was perfectly described to me as you phone somebody up and you start talking to them about the thing you want to know, and they immediately shut down on you. But if you provide context ahead of time, you're way more likely to get the information out of them because they understand why you want it. And they don't create their own context, which is negative. Most people will create a negative context when they don't know you.
That's what I'm thinking. Like I'm asking a towel, I'm gonna drop a cup of water on me first, and then can I have a towel now?
but it's all that stranger danger
It's
and all that
self-defense,
stuff
yeah.
that we pump into. Yeah, exactly, self-defense. We pump it into the kids, and we shut them down on opportunities because they always think that somebody wants to use them or it's bad or something like that. But providing a context gives them an out for that. You don't let them create that negative context to themselves. You say, okay, I'm calling you today because I work for this department. We need this piece of information to create this thing which will improve society, and would really like your help with it. Asking somebody for help is a context that changes their attitude for this person wants to use me, for this person needs me for something. And likewise, when you're giving a recommendation for a story, you need to provide a context which changes the person. Think, oh, this person's pushing this on me. They want me to watch this thing for their nefarious motive.
For themselves. Exactly.
Oh, this person's recommending this for me because it might give me a context, it might give me a connection to this story, which will help me understand other things in my life. And when you provide a context which is positive and experiential, you then change the person's narrative and the person's understanding of why you're giving a recommendation. So I would recommend this. If people like crunchy sci-fi and want to escape, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this movie to them. But if they want something that resonates with them and their feelings for their past and their future and how they should interact with their present, then I would highly recommend this movie to them.
But and I agree with you 100%. If you're looking for escapism sci-fi, this is not the movie to go for. That you're going to be you'll be very disappointed going into this. That being said, if you are somebody that likes things just beyond a very narrow scope, if you like things that deal with what it means to be a person, if you like that side of science fiction, what does it mean to be human? Yeah, you're going to find something here to connect with. And context,
the human condition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think context is good storytelling. Bad storytelling is a synopsis. It's a description of events, and it's very clinical, and it's these things that happen. That's bad storytelling. When you go through the emotional arc of what happened to each one of those beats, that's when you have a fuller, richer
dictation and storytelling difference.
Yep. Yeah. And so if you're taking the time to get to know the person that you're recommending this to, then that makes all the difference in the world. But what I'm saying is when I recommend this to somebody, I think that what you're getting to also is if you want to know part of who I am as an individual, if you watch this movie, you'll have a much better idea of who I am. I think that, and if you don't like this movie, I don't know, man. I don't know how close
you're Kenneth. You're Kenneth, the girl or the other guy? Just kidding, bro.
I think
I'm definitely the younger guy.
I've been every one of these characters at different points in my life, honestly.
Yeah. And remember, I said earlier, like that's something I liked about the movie. Like you can relate to every single one of the characters in some parts of the movie.
Yep.
Because of like the everyday things that they go through, like how mundane and normal the job that Kenny has, you know. But look at the brainiac he is. So it's like a lost jewel. It's like a Waldo jewel lost in the paper. Like nobody would ever know that this guy was like the next freaking genius.
Well, everybody on this call has gone off at some point in their life about something that you're deeply passionate about and started talking about it. And then you've realized a minute into the story that you're talking to the wrong person about this thing because you see that glazed over look in their eyes and you're like, oh, shit, here we go again. So this person does not care about, Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi having an argument over the shitter in 1932. I am talking to the wrong person about this. So yeah,
well, I learned when I discovered about context that you don't answer a person with your personal opinion. When somebody asks you for a recommendation, you do not do that.
Yeah.
That is a mistake. What you do is you ask them another question.
What do you like?
Yes. What sort of things do you like? If you give me a sci-fi recommendation, I don't just go, oh, Star Wars, oh, this, oh, that. I go, well, what sort of sci-fi do you like? And they go, there's different types of sci-fi. I go, shit, I'm out of here. Because they really haven't thought about it very much.
Yeah.
I have the perfect question that I always use. Well, perfect for me is like, what kind of flavor sci-fi you like? Because there's so many flavors. And
flavor of sci-fi.
Flavor of sci-fi.
Yeah.
I have my taste buds in sci-fi are the range is wide, and I think Giancarlo can attest to this because I think between Ray and Giancarlo knows me more, but my range in sci-fi is so wide, and I think that's why I have the hunger for when we did the show, and Giancarlo can remember back in the day, I was planning to do a podcast. But prior to the podcast, I remember that conversation with Giancarlo where I was telling him, I'm looking for a podcast to listen to that caters to my taste in sci-fi. And I looked and looked and looked. And yes, I found great podcasts, but they're all about Star Wars, all about Star Trek, all about Firefly, but no one in particular was covering everything, which is my taste.
Man, I mean, come on, and it has Morena Bacari on it.
Or they were making jokes about science fiction.
I love that. Like that chick, I have a crush on her. That's my celebrity crush. She's beautiful.
I mean, I was. I'm here now because I started listening to Sci-Fi Remnant with these guys.
You guys are going robotic. I'm gonna come back in.
They're on my page. They start talking about a movie and they're talking about planetary orbits and how this and that interacted. And I'm like, yeah, these are my people. I'm now on here.
It's a good feeling.
It is. Find your
so
people.
Yeah, I know I got into a tangent, but I love all kinds of. Yeah, when is that new? I like my taste is wide, and I love to be able to like this would be one of those flavors of sci-fi that I like, and why I guess when I recommend something, it's most likely it might not be to the taste of the person because my range is so wide that I'm in love with all kinds of sci-fi stories.
There's something to be said for a blind recommendation though. When I go to a restaurant and I don't know anything about the cuisine, it's a type of food that I'm not familiar with, I'll go in and ask, and what would you recommend? I'm open to something new. I'm going to tell you what I normally eat if you ask, but really I don't want what I normally eat. I came in here to have something different. I want something that I'm not aware of. I want a new experience. Give me what would you order if you were sitting down here right now? Because even if it's something that I don't necessarily love, I'm always interested in the things that connect with other people. What's that flavor? Like, fermented mushrooms, not my thing, but I had to try them because there are so many people that are, drinking those things now. So there's a curiosity there that I have. So if somebody really loves something, is passionate about it.
Did your face melt when you drink them?
Yeah.
It's not just that. It's the fact that nobody is a completed story. We're always changing. And I this is completely off tangent. I apologize, but it does feed back into this. That I was looking for new guttering for the house that we'd bought, and we've been in this house 8 years now. And I was looking for new guttering, so I had a whole bunch of people come and quote. And the people that we ended up going with wasn't because I had been given the best advice and quote on guttering. I ended up going with this guttering mob because this old guy who worked with them came to quote for us, and he ended up sitting there and talking with me for like an hour on nothing to do with guttering. What he was talking to me about was life experience and his life experience. And what he said to me was, you will discover as you get older that your thinking changes as you age. He's now in his 80s and he's still working. I said, why aren't you like retired? And he said, because life is different when you're 80 than when it was when you were 20, 30, 40, 50, 60.
Yeah.
And I'm experiencing new things now that
The
I
people
wouldn't have
that live
experienced
longest
doing this at a
are the
younger
ones that
age.
stay working.
Yeah.
Because that's
And he
that's
said,
what
I'm still,
deteriorates your health. Is the inactivity, and that's what keeps you alive.
but he said, I'm still working because I'm experiencing new things and I'm
Yeah.
still getting stuff out of doing this at 80.
Wow.
And he said, you will discover, I'm in my 50s now. In fact, I'm turning 53 in 2 days. But
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
It'll be an interesting week.
You're ready to have passed
I'm
because you're in the future.
That's right. But he said that you will experience things differently as you age, and you will think differently when you're my age than when you're thinking now. And he can look back and say that, and I agree with him in that you will experience things differently at different ages than you did when you were younger. Your gathered experience and understanding of the world changes. And that is why sci-fi will impact you differently as you age. You can go back and watch a movie now that you watched when you were younger and have a different experience of it.
Yeah.
And that's why blind recommendations are great, because you will get the experience that somebody else has through a recommendation, and you will experience that now, and you may find it great, you may find it you may find it bad, but then you can then go and experience that at a different point in your life and get a completely different take on it.
Yeah.
And that is what's great about life, and that is what's great about sci-fi, that it will stimulate you in different ways at different ages.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you go back and I think I've read Breakfast of Champions at least twice every decade of my life. It seems like, since I was 12 years old. And so I come back to that every couple of years, and the book is different every time I read it. The book's the same. It's the exact same, 230 pages that I've read all these times, but it is a completely different read every time I go through it. As a teenager, before, I had ever really had a girlfriend, and then going through that and having my first job, and then going through that and having kids and a wife, and then, having a mortgage, and how you view that is so deeply impacted by it.
Holy shit, that's traumatic, man. All at once.
What's that?
That was traumatic all at once.
Oh yeah. It's just it's something that, have you read the book? I mean, it's something I found it very funny.
What's the book
when I was a
again?
kid. It's a book. It's a Breakfast of Champions by Kirk Vonnegut.
No, I have not, but I have experienced what you say by reading the same book over and over. I have experienced that with Lord of the Rings, with
Yeah.
The Hobbit, and
And I
with
have
Lord of the Rings 1, 2, 3.
And I have the same experience with the movie Barbarella.
No, yeah, of course, yeah, of course, man. He watched it when he was 16, and now he watch it when he's older.
And we
You know?
talked
I
about
saw Barbarella when I was 16 as well, and I had a different experience than I would now.
I wasn't even born, man.
we talked about this in our episode on Barbarella, and it's I'm being funny, but still there's some truth to that. Where
It's what I said,
saw,
man. Direction was not distracting you for all the things that are happening in the
well,
in
yeah,
the movie.
partly when I was I
We
watched it
can
when I
only
was
run one head at a time. Not enough blood.
I watched it when I was very young, and the next time I watch it is when I was already an adult, and it is such a funny movie to me. But I never would have thought that it was a funny movie back when I first watched it. It's just interesting how, and it's true. It's your flavor changes as you age.
Yeah. Stasis is that's when you stop growing. And goddamn, as soon as I stop growing, both physically and emotionally, hopefully less physically, but that seems to be happening more and more. Just keep getting bigger and bigger as the years go on. I hope that when I'm 80 years old, that I'm like that gentleman that you were talking to, that I'm still trying to find ways to keep my mind active, that I'm still looking for new experiences and still growing, because I am not the person that I was 10 years ago, 10 weeks ago, 10 days ago, in so many ways, that you just build on every experience, and hopefully you're constantly growing and becoming a different person.
Mhm.
And I'm excited to find out who I'm going to be in 30 years from now. So
And,
Hopefully, you
to
continue with
understand,
the podcast.
oh yeah, we hope so. He's gonna be probably a radio figure by then.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like there's kind of, well, it's obviously more than two types of people, but there's two sort of generalities that you can sort of cast people into, and it's not perfect, but it's sort of the way I'm looking at things just at the moment. But there's the people who find the positive in everything, and they go looking for it. And then there's the people that are just ground down by things that happen to them. And there's sort of two paths that you can go on, the up and the down. And I find myself on both those paths in various points in my life. And I guess it can sort of roller coaster for you. But if you're looking for the positive, and I must admit that, another anecdote, because I'm anecdote man today, but I watch these things on YouTube, and I do get sort of lost in them occasionally, where they're manga stories taken from Japanese, translated into English, and then voiced. And there's quite a few channels on YouTube that are doing these now, and they're often rom-coms. And I was watching this one the other day. I'll throw you guys the link. But I was watching it, and it's about a guy who's asked to come to a cafe by his best friend. And he gets to the cafe, and his girlfriend's there. And he's like, okay, what's going on here? And then the best friend shows up, and they immediately apologize to him, and they tell him that they've developed feelings for each other. And he's like,
Oh no shit, Sherlock.
He's like, oh my god, what the hell? What's going on here? And he discovers that he wasn't open enough with his girlfriend, and she was going to his best friend to try and understand.
Oh my god.
The main character. And in doing so, they developed feelings for each other, because they were more open with each other than
some
he
BS,
was with
man.
his girlfriend. And he's like, well, he's heartbroken, but he also loves both of them. He loves his best friend and he loves his girlfriend. He goes, well, if that's how you feel, like, she's lost her feelings for him and developed feelings for his best friend, and his best friend is really apologetic. He said, look, man, I'm really sorry I've developed feelings for your girlfriend. And he goes, well, if you two can be happy together, then I'm not okay, but I'm okay with it.
He's so full of shit. Get off his high horse, man.
No. Now that is the immediate response that most people have.
That's called altruism, bro. I know. It's the hardest shit ever, but
it's all about me response, right? So I'm watching this thing, and I'm going, oh my god, I can relate to this, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the story goes on that he feels really bad for himself, but he goes, look, I hope you guys find happiness together. And he walks away, and he's devastated. And he's like, I can't keep away from these guys, because, like, the girlfriend's in my class, the best friend's in my class, and he has to keep seeing them. And he turns to exercise to try and work his way through. He says, I got to clear my mind by going jogging. And he jogs really long distances and works out really hard to try and get over this thing with exercise.
That's how he becomes One Punch Man.
Working on himself, not exactly, but one time when he's jogging, this girl talks to him, and she's the prettiest girl in school, right? The whole prettiest girl in school trope. And he finds out that she was secretly going out with his best friend, but his best friend hadn't told him about it. And she wants to spend time with him because she thinks he can relate to her, because she wants revenge. But he doesn't want revenge. And they're out together following the new couple around, his best friend and his ex-girlfriend. Yeah. And she wants revenge, but he's learning from the situation and discovering what he did wrong in that relationship. And she's thinking that he's hurting over it. And he is, but he's also learning from it. And I looked at this, and besides the prettiest girl in school, ex-girlfriend of the best friend, the exact same thing happened to me. But I was a lot older. I was in my mid-30s. And this friend, who I won't mention names because I don't want to like name and shame or anything like that. But this friend is still a good friend of mine. He's married to my ex-girlfriend, and they have 2 wonderful kids. And I've moved on. I've married another girl that I.
Is it over when you meet them?
No,
I think I'm more.
No, it's not. It was hard to begin with.
But once you detach from that person emotionally, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I've lived it through.
I was a little bit resentful. I was very hurt. But I looked at the situation. I went that this girl had to move out. I was living with her, and this girl had to move out because her parents wouldn't accept me because I was 10 years older than her. But they were the same age, and he'd never had a girlfriend before, and I saw that they needed each other, and that they were a better fit than I was with her, and I let her go. You got to love somebody enough to let them go.
Yep.
And I cared about both of them, and I wanted them to be happy together. And she was going to move out on her own, and they weren't going to have anything to do with each other because they felt really bad about having feelings for each other, because he was a really good friend of mine and she was my girlfriend. And I said, look, shit happens. I've been through a lot. I'd already been married once, and it had gone bad, and I knew what bad was. And this wasn't that bad. I had some understanding of what real bad was. And I said, look, this really hurts, but she and I aren't a great fit. If you two are a good fit, go for it. I give you my blessing. I will get over this. I will move on. I care about both of you. I want you to be happy. And I completely related to this story when I saw. I went, well, shit. Except for the ex-girlfriend of the friend, this is something that happened to me. And I wrote that down in the comments. And there was 2 reactions, two classes of reactions. There was Giancarlo's reaction. It was like, that's bullshit. You should hate them, and you should never talk to them again. And you should be really angry with them. And then there was the measured response.
Chop them in little pieces and eat them every Thursday.
Exactly. And then there was the measured response, which I had, which was the I understand where you're coming from. You cared about them. You wanted them to be happy. That's why I like this story that I'm watching, in that I can relate to. And there's that's the sort of maturity levels, what you've been through and what you consider as bad, versus the immediate response of, I hate you because you fucked me up.
Can I offer? There's a third response though.
Yeah.
As well.
Okay. Go for it. Tell me
my
what the response
response to that, having been somebody that's been cheated on in my life, not past relationships, if somebody doesn't want to be with me, I like myself enough to not want to be with them.
Yep.
It's not that I'm being altruistic. It's not that I'm giving you this gift of moving on.
No,
it's
you're
that
choosing yourself.
It's that I like myself enough that if somebody wants to be with somebody else, just be gone. If you don't want to be with me, if there's that desire and that drive, then I don't want somebody. I am not into somebody. It's gross to me if you feel like somebody doesn't want to be with you and you're lying bed and next to them. It doesn't feel comfortable. That's not warmth. That's not.
No.
That's not good.
Actually, it's corrosive to your self-esteem.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a shitty feeling.
Horrible.
So it's
trying to hang on to somebody that wants to move on is not a healthy thing to do.
Nope, not one bit. And it's for purely selfish reasons that I will let you go. It's not because I'm trying to do what's best for you and best for my friend that you're deciding to be with now. It's because I would be miserable.
Security usually it's fear to be alone. It's fear of change. That's what the human condition. That's what we most have a struggle with throughout the whole history of humanity. Is change. We want to control it. We want to contain it. but change is wild. You cannot really put a grasp into it. You cannot change how things are, and we always have difficulty with just adjusting, going with the flow of things, and holding on to and letting go of it, of people. Thinking that
Okay.
other person is responsible for my happiness when that's not true. Nobody's responsible for my happiness, and or many people saying like, "Oh, I'm a victim." No, 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 you're not a victim, because even when somebody does wrong to you, you allow it. You know. So I mean, it's a way to be uh, in for whatever happens in our life without trying to put a blame on anybody.
For sure.
But it definitely calls back to this movie in that they're wanting to change their pasts, or they're wanting to rediscover things in their past which they've moved past, and that personal responsibility of, well, they start out with that sort of young view of, I've got to get that back, I can't let it go, and then they move on to the view of, well, it's not the same as what it was, I can't ever get that back, it's my past, I need to live in the present and move on into the future. And my anecdote was sort of talking about really resonating with the story that you watch and you go, that's me. And adventure sci-fi is a thing that you want to escape, and it's not part of you. It's something that you would like to just get away from what you're dealing with now. And that's natural. People need to get away. That's why people go on holidays. They need to get away from things for a while and refresh. And sci-fi that's adventurous can do that for you, especially if you love that sort of a feeling. And I do. I watch a lot of anime that's completely escapism. But then you see a story like this and you can connect with it because it's an everyman story or an every person story. I don't want to, just talk about the sexuality that's represented here in this podcast, but it's an every person story in that people are seeking solutions in their past, and time travel is one of those science fiction staples that can give you a feeling that you might be able to go back and fix that. But you are now in your present a combination of your experiences from your past. And if you went back and changed them, you wouldn't be you anymore. It would completely change. Think about Darius, and if her mother had survived, she wouldn't be the person she is now. She'd be a completely different person.
Yeah.
And she discovers that in that discovering her love for the main character, the
Kenneth.
What's his name?
Kenneth.
Kenneth. Yeah, Kenneth. In discovering her feelings for him, she realizes that going back and changing her past is not what she really needs to do. And I think that when she goes at the end of the movie, when they do actually go back, she will discover that if she changes that past, she may not even meet him. She may not even fall in love with him, because that's no longer her reality and her past that her present is built on. So time traveling back is very, very dangerous in that will change who you are.
And you don't even know what's going to be the path from that past all the way back to that present again. You don't even know. It's not going to transpire the same way. No. You're going a whole new road.
Exactly. So wanting to change your past is fine, but understanding that if you do that, you will not be you anymore is also very, very important.
That's something that I've learned with life. Like my past, no, never would change it. Because at the end of the day, who we are today is just a conglomerate of our experiences.
Wanting to forget and wanting to change are two different things, though.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that I'd rather forgive and not forget, and not allow the remembrance to affect me in a negative way, but to hold a lesson for my own well-being. It's like forgiving somebody that wronged you in a bad way too. Like, you don't necessarily have to forgive them because you care about them. You forgive them because you should not have space in your heart for hatred or anxiety or anger towards somebody. That's a big privilege to give to somebody that energy every day, feeling like that, So for that, you just don't feel anything about it. And wishing happiness. Brazilian says like happy people don't bother anybody. So wishing happiness really. Because I mean, what's wrong about that? Like whatever life's karma, like I've seen that it really works. So whatever we do in life, it's gonna come back to us. Whenever we don't learn a lesson, it just keeps on repeating in different ways in life until we learn that lesson and a new chapter comes on life.
Okay. Um. So with that said, should we move on to the next segment?
Yeah. I think it's probably the way to go.
The science in sci-fi.
This is my selfish little corner where the scientist in me wants to talk about what the hell's going on with this movie, whether they got things right or wrong or what have you. Obviously, the way this functions is the further back the movie is, like Alien or 2001: Space Odyssey or whatever. There's things in there that they predict that may well have shaped the way technology's gone for us, and you can sort of draw those parallels. Obviously, this movie didn't have a lot of sciencey things in it that could have impacted upon where we are now with science. Although there's actually a paper that, or an article that Robert shot me just before we started here, talking about the Large Hadron Collider could be the world's first time machine. And certainly at a subatomic level, that's way more possible than a large physical level that we're looking at in this movie. I didn't actually have time to read this before we started, so I can't really draw a lot of parallels from this, but I can say that on a subatomic level, time travel is way more possible than on a macro level where we exist ourselves. I could probably go into that if I had more time to research it, but I haven't had it at the moment. But it's well worth reading the current situation and understanding of string theory and the physics of the nano world as it stands. Gives you a lot more idea about quantum physics and how the quantum realm differs greatly from how we experience life as it stands for us. And there's a lot of other properties, like ones that I've been mentioning. Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai goes into the same sort of realm of quantum physics affecting storytelling in the real world. But the Large Hadron Collider, they were worried that it was going to create black holes when it was originally switched on.
Yeah.
Not that we've seen that. Micro singularities may not exist for long enough to actually impact upon the physical realm, but they are a thing that could happen. What I wanted to just quickly touch on was something that I wasn't here for during the episode we did on Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
In that time travel is not something that can be considered possible unless you also have a vehicle that can travel through space. The TARDIS being the one that's the most obvious, a space and time traveling vehicle, because the Earth does not exist now where it did in the past. There's actually 4 different vectors of travel. You've got the spin of the Earth, so you are no longer located physically on the sphere where you were a few seconds ago, because the Earth is constantly spinning. The Earth also travels around the sun, so there's another circular motion, so that's number 2. Number 3 is the travel of the sun. So the sun is moving around the galaxy. I think it's 212 million years in a rotation. So we do not exist within the plane of the galaxy where we did a few seconds ago. We're constantly moving there. So that's number 3. And number 4 is actual movement of the Milky Way galaxy. So it's moving through space in a direction as well. So there's 4 different planes of direction that we are currently and constantly moving that we don't actually feel. We feel like we're standing on Earth in one spot, but we're not. We're constantly moving in 4 different planes of movement, and we don't feel them. But as time passes, we move through those 4 different planes. And if you were to time travel from this point in time back to another point in time, you would find yourself in deep space, most likely. And that would be very unfortunate for your continued existence. So if you were to time travel, you would need to time travel in a way that also moves you physically through the universe back to the point where the Earth was and where your physical location was at that time. Now,
so remember, don't ever ask a genie to drop you where you were born.
Because you'll be in deep space. But if you were to time travel in very, very, very small jumps, that might be able to overcome that. And you kind of see that in The Time Machine, the movie The Time Machine, where he's moving forward in time and he can actually see time moving. So he may be jumping very, very small increments. So he's physically not being removed from the location. But if you were to jump suddenly from here to 20 years in the future or 20 years in the past, you would be out in deep space. There's no other way to look at it. So that was just my sort of logical progression of time travel. The other thing that in the representation of time travel in this movie was that there was a sphere being created around them, and then suddenly they disappeared, but it didn't affect the water. What it really should have done is, if it was a sphere of time travel, it should have chewed a chunk out of the water. And I would have loved to have seen when that sphere disappeared and they disappeared, that the water underneath them disappeared as well, and then the water sort of flowed back into that hole. I would have been way more impressed. It would have been a lot harder for the special effects, but I would have been way more impressed if it was creating a sphere of time travel around them, that the water had gone with them. And that little bit of the dock that was hanging there, that would have been great.
Okay. Awesome. So this actually concludes our show. I really want to thank our listeners for being with us for just one more episode. And I want to thank Chris for
Thank you, Chris, for
finally
coming.
being in our show. I wanted to have him in the show for such a long time, and I am really, really happy that we can make our schedules work in a way that, and I hope we don't scare him enough
No,
that
not at all.
he can come back.
Our longest episode is like 3 hours.
So,
If
Chris,
we hang around for 20 minutes, we'll get there.
Close.
So, Chris, again, tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah. If you go on Twitter, it's following_films. Following Films podcast. Anywhere that you are listening to a podcast, you'll be able to find it there. If you're listening on the Anchor app, which is where Sci-Fi Remnant comes from, you can also find Following Films there. That's what I host mine on as well. I just do an interview show, tend to interview filmmakers, writers, actors, directors. I've had a ton of people on the show over the last 7 years, and everybody from Richard Armitage to, we've had 2 Simpsons characters on there, Lisa Cartwright and Nancy Cartwright, and Yardley Smith, Lisa Simpson, the voice of that, has been on there. So yeah, there's been a ton of people on in the last couple of years, so go back, check it out, and yeah, hope you enjoy it.
Awesome.
Nice.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you listeners being with us for one more episode. Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon in Twitter and on our Discord.